faith, unity, and love. Lord, strengthen
Ako ang tamang mo.
inflame our hearts with your loving spirit so that our actions bless us with the tenacity to always practice relationships with all our stakeholders as we continue to commit ourselves on Pilipinas.
Bayang magiliw, perlas ang sila. Itong paghaw, ay nilang ang tula at awit sa pag ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagtitindig. Ang bimbang ay di magdidilig, lupa ng araw ng waraming pagsikat. Aking mga
Okay na. Good morning to all and welcome to the first DBP Development Forum for this year. May I convey our sincerest gratitude to our friends from the Futuristic Center, chaired by former DOF Secretary Bobby De Ocampo, my esteemed colleagues from the DBP Board of Directors, the senior officers and staff of the bank, and our guests from the Futuristic Center who are joining us today via Zoom. Our partner schools under the DBP Resources for Inclusive and Sustainable Education, and the DBP Forest Program, valued clients from the local government sector, and members of the public watching this event as live streamed via DBP Facebook page. I would also like to thank Professor Gil Santos, who co-germinated the ideas for this development forum, together with our beloved DBP Director, Inday Arsenas. Let me also take this opportunity to convey, on behalf of the DBP Board of Directors, my utmost gratitude and appreciation to all of you, especially our DBP family and our valued clients, for your invaluable support to our development work, most especially during my tenure as chairman of the Development Bank of the Philippines. As we all know, on June 30, we will welcome a new set of national leaders who will lead 110 million of us in the next 6 years. Thus, the theme of the Development Forum today, major challenges in the immediate future, augurs well in the context of the challenges we continue to face in a VUCA world that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environment. Given the volatility and uncertainties of the present moment, I would like to ask our forum participants to listen very carefully to the presentation of Dr. Chester Cabalsa of the International Development and Security Cooperation and the Development Academy of the Philippines on knowledge and society mindsets of the future for national development and human security. Equally compelling and needing immediate attention is the area relative to technology innovation, the future for food security relative to national security, to be presented by Dr. Narciso Intal of INAVET Nutrition Technologies. Last week, our Department of Agriculture appealed to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, Director General, to spearhead another global appeal to various countries to ensure the unhampered movement of food and agricultural inputs as part of the global effort to build more efficient, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable agriculture and food systems. During the open forum, I urge each one of you to ask questions to our panel of experts here. Share with us your ideas and concrete solutions. Together, let us explore every avenue to build possibilities for the future of our beloved country. Thank you, and I wish everyone an insightful and enlightening discussion during the DBP Development Forum.
To bring us to bring us closer to bring us closer to what this development forum is all about, our keynote speaker will challenge us on what we may already know. Mr. Guillermo Gil Santos is a newspaper and media management specialist, a journalism and geopolitics lecturer at the Lyceum of the Philippines University, a broadcast journalist and international relations lecturer, president of the Growth Agro Fisheries Development Corporation, project director of Philippines 2050 The Future, vice chairman, Center for Philippine Futuristic Studies and Management, member of the Government Industry Advisory Board of BUP College of Journalism. Unfortunately, Mr. Santos is unable to join us today. Attorney Horace Maurusha from the Futuristics Center shall be delivering Mr. Santos' talk this morning. Attorney Maurusha. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Chairman Romulan, members of the board, Development Bank of the Philippines, distinguished invited guests, fellow members of the Center for Philippine Futuristic Studies and Management, Futuristic Center for short. Thank you for welcoming us to this historic event we have jointly launched today. We hope this will be the start of a series of our efforts to take a peek on the immediate challenges facing our country, on reliable and accurate facts and data, so we can form doable or realistic concepts to cope with those challenges. Alone, the Futuristic Center does not form suggestions to our government planning institutions, but in partnership with key government and private institutions, we do so as a result of the open forum portion of our programs, wherein in-depth discussions on issues and probable solutions are used to arrive at more realistic solutions, as we have since the precedent organization, the Philippine Futuristic Society, was registered in 1981. Because we see the importance of joint and multi-level discussions of urgent challenges and solutions, challenges in educational and mind-setting trending, and food, water, security, and environmental rehabilitation, all tied up with our national security. This is because all geopolitical developments anywhere worldwide affect all nations, directly or otherwise. In this 21st century, where all competitors for superpower hegemony weaponize every factor in our global socioeconomic and geopolitical interrelations. Science and technological advances have, since the First World War, shrunken our Earth. And the power of communications and food supply have been growing challenges, especially to small nations like ours. We must constantly be informed, so most of our Filipino peoples will be sufficiently informed instead of overly entertained. We look forward to a most useful discussion in the next 3 hours or so. Thank you very much, Professor Guillermo Gil Santos. Thank you, General Mauricio, for that message from Dr. Santos. May we be challenged to think beyond what we already know. At this point, may we introduce our first presenter, Dr. Chester B. Cabalza, who will share a talk about knowledge and society, mindsets of the future for national development and human security. Dr. Cabalza is the founder and president of the Manila-based think tank, International Development and Security Cooperation. Has been an active member of the Academy, being involved with UP Development Academy of the Philippines, National Defense College, Command and General Staff College, College of Defense Studies at the National Defense University in Beijing, and the U.S. State Department University of Delaware. Hired as a scientist by the DOST, and a former consultant of the World Bank and JICA, and frequent interviewee on issues on South China Sea, terrorism, and other related international and political economy issues, among other achievements. Let us all welcome Dr. Chester B. Cabalza.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the kind introduction. So allow me to give my, how would I call it, lecture. I'm only given 15 minutes, and of course, we'll try to cover a lot of things here, since we'll be talking about a lot of variables here, like knowledge in the society, the future of national development and human security. Basically, these are some of the topics that we will be discussing. Can we move to the next slide so that we know the coverage of the topic that we will cover this morning? But of course, I encourage every one of you to please ask questions later on during the open forum. I think this is the best way for us to learn from each other, and of course to have a foresight of what may happen in the future, and what would be the recommendations for our government and for the country. So these are some of the objectives that I think will help us in trying to carve out the contours of the geopolitics of the world and of the Philippines, and what would be the challenges that our country may encounter in the future. So basically, we will try to orient view of the global changing global. Please go back, please. Changing global security and foreign relations landscape, and we foresee some trends on national development and human security. I think this is a buzz lately because I think the National Security Council will try to shift from the state-centric national security to more people-centered human security. And I think this is something where the Development Bank of the Philippines can help us on how to attain this human security. And lastly, to employ effective strategies for the changes in the future, because right now the world is changing. We should be these are some changes that okay. All right. Next slide, please. So I know that you already have an idea about foresight. Foresight, it's like a metaphorical oracle here. We will try to foresee what would happen in the future, given all the variables that we have in mind. So next slide, please. So you have here the planning, prospects. That's why you are doing forecasting and backcasting, basically, based from what is happening at the moment and what has happened in the past, so that for us to better see what will happen in the future. So these are some of the context we will try to do in our discussion for this morning. And while we are, look at this one. So where is it used, when it is used, how it is used, and why. So we will see all those factors there. Given that, of course, we have different actors like the government and, of course, the private sector, and definitely the civil society also, that we will have to consider in trying to carve some of our recommendations for the government. Okay, let's move to the next slide so that we will see more of the context of this knowledge of society that we have in mind. Next slide, please. Okay, like I told you earlier, the world is changing right now. We are now in a multipolar world. When we say multipolar, it's no longer one power that is being that dominates the world. It used to be the United States, basically. And of course, with the Cold War, we've seen the USSR and the US competing against each other until such a time the US won. And now we are again in a multipolar world where a lot of major countries like Russia, China, and India are trying to debunk the position of the United States because they see that the US is not fulfilling its obligations as a world's police. That's why they are trying to flex their muscles as of the moment. That's the reason why we have the Russia-Ukraine war, to show to the world that Russia can compete and can still revive its position as a superpower. Russia used to be a superpower through the USSR. So I think these are some of the provisions that they are trying to propose right now in the world affairs. Okay, and it's not new to us to have a multipolar world because way back in 17th century, there used to be they call it the Concert of Europe, where you have France, Prussia, and some other two other major powers competing for hegemony, and the British won, and we saw that the Allies actually became the superpower, and of course the US became the heir apparent of that superpower position right now. And some are saying that Southeast Asia, particularly Indo-Pacific, would become the next Europe, because we will see a lot of wars, competitions happening right now, because that's how the world survives, because we are in a very anarchic realist world where, world peace is a very utopian idea, because at the end of the day, we will compete for resources, and we should have effective strategies on how to work. So that's what we will be doing right now. Okay, next slide, please. So just to have a rundown of the rise of nations in national security, remember that what we are doing, what a lot of security analysts and experts, and even of course in our national and defense institutions have right now is an idea of a state-centric, because of what happened in our world history. Remember, there was monarchy, and then the institution of the republics, and then you have revolutions, which is which were apparent in our world history. And then, if you notice, we've seen the world's war to Cold War. Basically, this happened all in Europe. And Europe used to be a continent of war, and it became a continent of cooperation and multilateralism until such time Russia invaded Ukraine again. So there's a question whether or not the world can survive a multilateral world, because technically nations are like humans. They behave differently based on their interest. We should understand that. And from a national security perspective, a lot of analysis now are going towards human security. It's like in economy where you have before you have the public ideas on how to develop, and then you have the privatization. Now you have the PPP and so on. So it keeps on shifting also on how we look at security. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Okay, so again, this is human security is not new. Basically, it was introduced in 1990s when Pakistani economists challenged the proposition of the UNDP. And at the time, because a lot of countries were using state-centric national security, this guy, Abul Haq, challenged the idea of state security and proposed this national human security. In the Philippines, at the National Defense College, in the Command and General Staff College, in DAP, we used the PESTEM framework when we look at national security, political, economic, sociocultural, ethno-scientific, environmental, and of course, the military. But here, in human security, we are talking about these dimensions of security, where we talk about personal security, economic security, health security, political, community, food, and environment. And of course, I heard that the focus of the government right now would be on food security, so it would be focused on the people-centered kind of human security. But of course, a lot of us are suffering right now because of the COVID pandemic recovery on how we will strive on hunger, poverty alleviation, miseducation, and so on. So these are some of the things that we have to consider in crafting our policies and recommendations later on. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, again, in some other countries, while the world is changing, we will see regime security, where of course there will always be stratification among countries. There are superpowers, major powers. The Philippines is now a middle power. Imagine that, used to be a big state or big power. And we will try to look at the factors why the Philippines is achieved that position of becoming a middle power already. And of course, you have the security dilemma. And usually when you talk about security, there's always a dichotomy of the internal, external. That's why you always have that internal strategy, the external strategy, and of course, the military now have the ISO, the internal security operations, which I think the incoming administration will focus on that, according to some persons, because during the time of his father, internal security used to be the prevalent problem in our country, particularly on the communism, and of course now you have domestic terrorism. But we'll see, because there's a challenge there, because the military has invested a lot on our external defense and security, because we have the revised military modernization program, and we use people's money there. And I hope that, of course, given that there's a China threat, China challenge, I hope that the government will continue on that. That's the reason why we are trying to strengthen our Philippine Navy and Philippine Coast Guard, because our country is archipelagic maritime, and of course, we wanted to project that we can protect our maritime territorial integrity and national sovereignty. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, whenever we analyze, you at the development DBP Development Bank. When we analyze themes or events, according to Buzan, he's like the godfather of security in the world. You have to look at these units of analysis: the local, national, regional, and global. We speak global, regional, national, and local. That, like say for example, a terrorist attack happened in Sulu. There are repercussions of that attack in Sulu to our national security, and vis-a-vis to Southeast Asia, which is regional, and of course to global terrorism. So it connects. There's a how would I say it, a domino effect of what may happen. Say like for example, the 9/11. It's a global event, but it can also cascade to regional, national, and local. So that's how we should look at things or events or security issues, basically. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Okay, this became very popular again during the Russia-Ukraine war because this guy is the father of geopolitics. He predicted of what may happen to Russia and Ukraine because of his idea of this heartland. There was a contention, he says in his book, on the geographical pivot of history, that whoever controls the heartland, referring to Eurasia, will become the superpower. And China is using the same mantra right now in the contested South China Sea, that whoever controls the South China Sea, because it's the sea lines of communication, will become the next superpower. That's the reason why China is very focused on containing all other major powers in the South China Sea. So you see, ideas are very powerful now. That if you concoct an idea now, then maybe in the future it can be used. Just to share you an information, I wrote a book only recently in which the title of the book is The Rise of Philippinization. I conceptualized my own concept on Philippinization because of the natural geography of the Philippines, because we are being courted by two superpowers, unlike which was a cacophony of what happened to Finland. They used the word Finlandization, right? But Philippinization is different from Finlandization because Finlandization tells about the defeat of Finland, but in Philippinization, it tells about how we are trying to navigate our political connections with two superpowers while at the same time building our own national security infrastructure. So something like that. Now, maybe in the future, that concept will be used by other countries or by other scholars and so on. And I think it's being used right now in Ukraine, that kind of concept of Philippinization also. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is the concept of national security. Actually, there's no definition of national security, even amongst Americans who conceptualize national security. The reason why they use national security because they use, when the US became a superpower, of course, back in 20th century until now, still a superpower, they built this for the creation of their national defense. That's why in our Commonwealth Act number 1, what was that? It was the establishment of our national defense. So we copied a lot from our from Mother America, as we say it. No? So same as true with the Americans. Until such a time after World War II, they use national security. The reason why they use it for intelligence gathering, counterintelligence, and foreign intelligence. That's the reason why you have the CIA. No? It was used for that. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. In 2021, these are the most powerful nations last year. Remember, these are projections, ideas. And look at the ranking right now. It matters even up to now. You have the US, China, Russia, India, France, Germany, Japan, UK, South Korea, and Israel. Based from these variables, you have political stability, economic influence, defense budget, countries' weapons, global alliances, soft power, and the military strength. Now, let's look at what would happen. Next slide, please. Later on. This is the military strength 2021. These are some of the top 10 countries. The Philippines surprisingly achieved so much. Now we are now ranked number 26 in our naval capabilities. We outrank UK and Pakistan already. We are number 30 plus in our military strength because of the modernization and of course the acquisition of technologies that we are doing right now. So surprisingly, and of course the first is soldiers, don't underestimate, Filipinos are in the top 10. That's the reason why during the height of the West Philippine Sea problem, the people, our soldiers in the Defense Department, in the armed forces, really wanted to wage war with China basically, because that is their mandate for war fighting. But of course, ultimately, in the posture and architecture of our foreign relations, the DFA should be followed. And of course, the DFA wanted to just follow diplomatic protest and do the diplomatic work. So of course, the military will just have to follow with that. Okay, let's look at the next slide, please. Okay, actually, the US regained its position as the #1 soft power during the height of the pandemic because of the mismanagement of the COVID issues in the US. They dropped to #6. This year, they were able to regain their position as the #1 in terms of soft power. These are important because you have the hard power related to military, the soft power related to our image and some of our foreign policies. That's why I'm proposing to the for incoming NSA that of course we should carve also on smart power. I remember when I studied in Beijing, they were so alarmed with how the US used their smart power at the time. When Hillary Clinton was the top diplomat of the US at the time, because China wouldn't use, I don't know how to use smart power. No, and even soft power, they had a hard time in utilizing that soft power. Okay, next slide, please. Now, look at this one. By 2030, 8 years from now, and even by 2050, this will be the ranking of who would be the richest countries in the world. And you will see China, India, the US will be demoted. Indonesia, surprisingly, will become #4. Turkey, Brazil, Egypt, Russia, Japan, Germany. Things are changing. The emerging markets will become the richest countries in the world. That's why even the US now are trying to shift their interest towards the Asia Pacific. They used to call it Asia Pacific. That's why you have the APEC. Now they have renamed it to Indo-Pacific because India will have a special position also in the region. And of course, it's an ally of the US. Remember that what matters here would be interest and not partnerships or allies. The US and Japan used to be enemies. If you see in Netflix, you watch midwinter how the Japanese and the Americans were fighting against each other. Now they are best of friends. Now, and because of their interest, they have remain good friends. And also, let's try to look at some of the possibilities. If China is a threat right now, it could be our friend in the future, depending on the interest that we have so far on our economics and politics, basically. So remember that interest will remain permanent, but not partnerships and alliances. So it depends on how we look for our own future here. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, again, these are some of the projections so far by the banks, different banks, major banks around the world. We see the ranking, and Indonesia is really a star in Southeast Asia. Wow, I'm amazed with this one. I'm a fan of Indonesia, basically, not only in their economics, but also in their military. Okay, let's move to the next slide here. Okay, I'll try to have a quick SWOT analysis on the US and China, so that we know what are the strengths and weaknesses of these two countries, so that in the future, when we recommend some policies, we know we don't have to choose, but we should know our interest. We know what to do, and basically we know how to think critically. So these are the possession of the US, why the US is still would remain powerful, maritime superpower. I remember in the Philippines, all of those who conquered us were naval powers. You have Spain, the US, Japan, China, conquered. They are not superpowers, naval powers, basically. Naval superpower and ship power also those are some smart shipping and use of sensors. Ultimately, when it comes to the Navy, the US is still the gold standard, basically. Definitely, are still but the US is it's just structure and also some of the laws that I think would hinder the U.S. right now. Remember, the number one navy in terms of possessions, naval capability now are the Chinese number one navy in the world. China, number one Coast Guard, number one maritime militia are all Chinese now. They have outranked the United States already. But of course, later on, we will see why the frailties and weaknesses also of China. Okay, these are some of the weaknesses of China so far. Okay, let's move to the next. Next slide, please. Of course, the US is still good when it comes to maritime projection. And of course, in multilateral and unilateral arrangements, the US are very good with that. They copied that from the Europeans because, of course, the US and Europe are very are good allies, basically. And of course, their support on research and development. This is something that we have to invest also, no? For us to become more stronger and respectable. And on science, technology, and innovation. Of course, on food security, we have to invest more on that. We taught the Vietnamese and the Thais on agriculture, and now they are the rock stars when it comes to agriculture. So we'll see how they did it basically. No? Okay, next slide, please. So these are the threats for the US. Of course, China is under threat, and the anti-access area denial is the reason why in South China Sea it has become a big contention on how they use the invasion strategy. The Chinese are very good at that, and they shifted a greater percentage of their fleet into the Pacific. That's why you have the in the Pacific Command now in Hawaii. They changed it to basically recognize the presence of India and of course some allies like Japan and Australia, basically. And of course, the shrinking budget. That's the problem with the US right now. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, China. The projection is they also did modernization program, same as what we did in the Philippines during the time of Fidel Ramos and Jiang Zemin. They were doing karaoke diplomacy, but look at what they have achieved. They are now the number 2 economy and in the future number 1 economy. And of course, they are the largest in a lot of things already. They have a base most of their neighbors, even Japan and Korea, and even the US basically. And they are far more modern compared to Western navies. In Europe, they don't have coast guards. And China, of course, is the largest coast guard in the world right now. That's why a lot of the French British, I've been talking with them, they are also looking at the progress of China right now. And they are capable in conducting conventional nuclear precision strikes. That's the reason why when, of course, China knew that Vladimir Putin will invade Ukraine with conditions that, of course, that China be allowed to finish the Winter Olympics and that Russia will not push the button on nuclear weapons. If Russia does that, then Russia could become the enemy of China also. So those were the preconditions of Xi Jinping. And remember that by And also, Vladimir Putin is also copying what Xi Jinping is doing. No? They wanted to pull over position as presidents of the respective countries. Okay, and China is developing a hypersonic light vehicle. So a lot of things there. No? And of course, in the future, they have already had the everything. Chinese are very good at that, creating a lot of the biggest, largest, and so on, the fastest, and so on. Because look at the Great Wall of China. That was the manifestation of their country. And China will still behave like a middle kingdom, like an imperial power even in the future. That's going to be their behavior, and that's how they will change the world, or basically based from their own perspective. Okay, let's look at this one. Next slide, please. Why we should watch for China? Of course, their modernization program, and I told you already this one. They are all number one in the different fronts, and that's why a lot of countries are really about it. Okay, let's move to the next slide, please. Weaknesses? Well, they still lack recent combat experience. The last time they have no World War experience. If you watch Midway in Netflix, you would see how the Americans were protecting the Chinese at the time, because the Japanese were very powerful, and it's only recently that China became powerful. And they have no World War experience, even with their clash with India on territorial dispute. They don't have combat experience yet. So even if they have all the largest, biggest, and so on, in terms of strategy and war tactics, we have to see yet what would happen. No? That's the reason why, if you notice also, China is not yet a naval power. That's why what they did in the South China Sea, they reclaimed and militarized it, because it's a land power. They were like thinking of a Great Wall at sea. No? That's how they think. It's more of a territorial water than a naval power. Okay. Maritime strike, of course, these are some of the sophisticated problems. They have only one foreign base in Djibouti, in Africa. In Solomon Island, they had negotiated there, also in Cambodia recently. So imagine, if that would be realized, and they would only have 3 bases around the world, and look at how powerful they are now. Imagine if they have like 800 plus bases around the world, same as what the Americans have, then we're going to say that when China rules the world. So that's how China thinks big. Chinese are very good in planning, in realizing their visions. They have the tendency to become a hermit. And then remember what happened to them during the 100 years of revolution. They closed down their economy, and then thought so hard, planned well, and then when they are confident, they launch it in 1978, and look at where they are now. They don't want to copy the USSR model on socialism and communism, because Russia failed. Same as true as what Russia is doing right now in Ukraine. Is being with their interest with Taiwan, because the Chinese are very clever. They have the art of war. No? They think very clever, and they study us. That's why you have the world warrior diplomats. They're very good, very clever. And look what they did during the Hague ruling. They tried to pressure the part of government officials just to get what they want. So in other words, China will get what they want. Okay, let's not underestimate them. Let's move to the next slide. Okay, big on nuclear undersea capabilities, and Korea Force faces several glaring weaknesses. Korea deficiencies. They are still in the process of testing their technology on the steam catapult, and of course, information. I think the best cyber trolls are still Ukrainians, Russians. Yeah, they are very good at that. Not much with the Americans or the Chinese, but they are trying to. Chinese are, there's a culture in China, the Semitic culture, where right now they are students of a lot of things, but once they perfect it, they would do it anyway. So that's the Chinese doing things. Next slide, please. They rely on the Coast Guard. The Navy operates primarily in China's home water. That's why it's still territorial. And China's long-distance naval deployments have been protocols. And they have the largest, if I'm not wrong, the largest Coast Guard hospital. And you know what happens in Coast Guard hospitals? They use it also for espionage. So Vietnam is also doing the same thing. They are copying what the Chinese because of course the relationship with China. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, first, China's threat would be the US because they are competing for that superpower position. And of course, the maritime militia contributes to China's coverage strategy. They're using their economics. I think that's a picture of any superpower in the world. They would use first their economics, and then later on they will intervene in the military and the politics. Just like what the Spaniards, Americans, Japanese did. They started with economics in influencing a lot of colonial those countries that they conquered. Okay, next slide, please. This one. Just focus on the Russia because you might be asking later on. We were talking with Noy earlier why we don't get BFF fries anymore in McDonald's because of the lack of potatoes from Ukraine. And that's the reason why we have to study why Russia is behaving like this and why they are maintaining their great power status, of course, because of the insecurity of Russia. Imagine their neighbor is the Scandinavian region, the center of happiness. They are the most happy people on earth, and they are very progressive. They were threatened by Russia. They developed Finland just before like the Philippines, but in 100 years they were able to develop. And look at what the nuclear nation has done so far. So they are very good when it comes to intelligence, technology, and even studying is free in Finland. Even if you study PhD, medical medicine and law, everything is free there, of course, with at the expense of their tax. Okay, independent donation poll, of course, Russia is a two-faced country. It's a European, at the same time, an Asian power. But of course, Russia is Russia, as they say. And there's a dual approach here. They have this bad faith with the West because they helped the West before, but it seems like now the West is advancing eastward towards Russia. That's the reason why Ukraine became a buffer. That's the reason why I've been asked by the media what would happen in Taiwan if China takes Taiwan by force, because ultimately that's the vision of China. They are very outspoken about how they would want to get China because of their rejuvenation policy that by 2049 all of their lost territories should be already joined, should be part of or should be annexed in the mainland China. And that would be a big problem for us because the Philippines would become a buffer zone. And the nearest country to China, if Taiwan would be taken by China, would be the Philippines. Then we will become the next Ukraine. So you have to look at that in the future. And of course, are we ready for a prolonged warfare? That is also a problem. What would happen to our economy? And what would happen to our people? Everyone would become famished by that time. Okay, Ukraine relations, of course, this is the propaganda of the Russians, the Mother Russia propaganda, and of course, the backing the Donbas region by Drusophila separatist forces. Actually, what is happening in Russia and Ukraine is not new to us because of what happened in Marawi. They used and also in the West Philippine Sea. In Marawi, they used the hybrid warfare, urban warfare. We're used to that already. They use Bason. China has been using Bason also in the West Philippine Sea. So these are not new. That's why I keep on telling to the military, you have to encode it and decode it so that we know what to do in case this will be this problems will escalate. Okay, next issue. Next slide. Okay, see that the Donbas and the Crimea, annexation of Crimea and Donbas, and the Novorossiya concept, the Russia, and I think which we will see later on some of the prognosis in the future. If I think Russia would be satisfied to just contain these territories, but not Kyiv, because the Ukrainians, the high stake on Ukrainian resistance is very high. And I think they would not give up on Kyiv, because the idea is to conquer on the Ukraine in 72 hours by conquering Kyiv. But of course, they were not able to do that. I think in the future, maybe Russia would just be happy to have Crimea and this southern part, particularly in Donbas region. Okay, next slide, please. Mariupol is very strategic also, because of course they place a lot of their navy and military their armies there, but same they use hybrid warfare, urban warfare here. So we should learn also from that, no? Particularly that we still have insecurities when it comes to domestic terrorism. So I think that's the reason why the incoming government will focus on the domestic internal defense, because they would want to stop and halt the problem on insurgency and domestic terrorism. So that would be the strategy that they would employ. Next slide, please. Okay, just just to compare the strength of Russia and Ukraine, it's a matter of, it doesn't matter if you're big or small. What is important, you have effective strategy. That is something that we have to inculcate to our law enforcers. I keep on challenging because I also teach officers from the Philippine Coast Guard, Army, Armed Forces, and also from the Philippine Police. If I talk to the Philippine Police, they don't have strategies really when it comes to internal security, because they are only concerned with law and order. But if the incoming government would ask them to take control of internal security, they don't know what to do. So, in other words, what I'm trying to drive at here is that we have to, when you have effective strategy, you can contain big powers. No, you remember the story of 1 versus 100, the Spartans. So these are classic strategies. We even defeated the Chinese during the Korean War. No, under the leadership of it was Lieutenant Fidel Ramos at that time, who confronted a lot of Chinese soldiers in Korea, and the Filipinos were victorious at the time. So in other words, when it comes to the bravery of our soldiers, that's not the problem will be on the political will and strategy that would be improved. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this will be the future. You see drones, missile, the nuclear wars. That's the last week I was invited by the State Department to have a dinner at Intramuros, because some Americans from America basically wanted to know what would be the Filipinos' perception when it comes to nuclear war, and including my fellow analysts who were present there. We were like, really? You're asking us about nuclear war? A lot of Filipinos are hungry. Why would we think about that? Because basically we are more concerned of the comprehensive security more than nuclear war. We don't care about nuclear war. So you see the level of security that we have, and that Americans are very concerned about it. Because I think there are only two countries in the world that can destroy the world: the Americans and the Russians, because of their nuclear weapons. That's the reason why the Americans are trying to stop what the Russians may think. That, of course, remember that leaders are humans also. What if Putin in the future would consider of pushing the button? Then that would start a nuclear war, and it will be spot, because they are the only two countries in the world that possess nuclear weapons that can destroy the world. Then it's needed to work peacefully. Espionage. Now, of course, we've been. This is something that we have to invest also on cyber, especially that we are doing hybrid now, and I think when it comes to human resources, to pool of talents, when it comes to cyber, we are not lucky. I think what we lack are the opportunities given to them, because there are examples, basically, how we saw the ingenuity of Filipinos when it comes to cyber. You have the love bug attacks and so on. So just give them opportunities. And I think this is something that we have to consider, particularly you in private banks, government banks, in the bank community. You have to look at this one also. Okay. AI would be, of course, some of the future scenarios there. Why would you bring your human soldiers to wars if you can use robots? So I think those are some of the possibilities that we can look at in the future. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I won't discuss much of this one. These are some of the strategic vantage points of Ukraine, why they are winning so far in the first phase of the war. I think because of their people. And look at this one. Let's move to the next. Assets, the assets first, I'll go back. You see the assets of Ukraine when it comes to energy, the largest country by area in Europe, number one in recoverable reserves of uranium ores, number two, and number 10 in the world in terms of titanium reserves, number two in reserves of manganese, largest oil reserves, mercury, shale gas, natural resources, 7th in the world in coal reserves. That's the reason why Russia wanted them. Remember that once a country, once a country is rich, of course, tendency for big powers is to expand and get their resources for their own perpetuity. That's a common survival by a realist perspective. Next slide, please. Okay, these are agriculture, bread basket, of course, arable land, corn, potatoes. That's why we don't have BFF already in McDonald's, because our potatoes are shut down because of the war. Rye producer, beef production, wheat, chicken, eggs, cheese export. So, in other words, Ukraine is relatively rich when it comes to the industries, ammonia, natural pipeline, and so on. So those are some of the fast facts when it comes to industrial assets of Ukraine. Next slide, please. And also, okay, it would become a headache for the international, of course, because hot wars. If you've heard about Cold War, we will see more hot wars in the future where these major countries, major powers like the US, Russia, China, and India will try to flex their military muscles and try to bring a lot of conflicts and wars, perhaps shooting wars in the world, because there is no, we are still deliberating who will become the superpower. Remember that there should only be one superpower, one leader in the world, not two leaders. The world will not allow that. That's why they are competing. Okay, next please. Okay, these are some of the problems there. EU's dependence on Russia's for the gas, 40% natural gas and 25% oil. We see the scenarios in 1970s with oil price shocks. And of course, Russia is using that for, even if Russia is the most sanctioned country in the world, but they are surviving. Despite that, I think the countries will be hurt, would be European Union basically. And Russia is using that for countermeasure as part of the asymmetrical damage because of their energy and basically wheat. Next slide, please. Okay, affects the emerging countries. Of course, you have here a problem on inflation and stagflation. So I think you are more here because you are from the DBP. And then the petroleum problem here. Of course, Americans and Europeans are nudging Saudi Arabia to increase oil production. And of course, if that happens, then it will be relatively efficient. Remember that the big three countries, the US has the most reserve of oil, followed by Saudi, number two will be Russia. So Americans are very strategic reason. And what happened here? Okay, next slide so that we can finish it on time. Next slide, please. Okay, you will see this. So there are calls that Europe should diversify and become more self-sufficient because of the problem that they have with Russia right now. And these are some of the problems. Even if the Russians, Russia is sanctioned, those were the Russian oligarchs were sanctioned. Were affected mostly, but not Putin basically. And I can entertain some of the questions later on. Let's just move with these slides because these are pretty common knowledge among us. Okay, the pivot of Russia to China because the ink procure contract on supplying gas into Beijing through pipelines, and of course the petrodollar economy. Of course, China, of course, is pursuing a different strategy of the yuan. And of course, I read to discuss about this possible nuclear war. Next slide, please. Next slide. Sorry, mahaba po. konti na lang. Next slide. Okay, next slide. Okay, it stopped right there. But maybe okay, arms deal with Southeast Asia. Russia, we'll see how Russia will survive, whether it will win or not, because perceptibly, it's the number 2 most powerful military in the world. But if they lose, then what would be the perception? Perceptions you cannot quantify it sometimes. No? So that is something that we have to look at, especially that Russia is also, that we are also investing with Russia support. Okay, next slide. Okay, I want to discuss same as arms deal in Southeast Asia. Next slide, please. Economic-wise, you see ASEAN is not really a big factor in this war, although we are experiencing a lot of things, especially in our energy sector, and which may affect also our food security. And these are some of the countries hardest hit by Russia. And you don't see Southeast Asia there, neither the Philippines. Okay, next slide. I think matatapos na ito. Okay, these are some of the possibilities. Neutrality of Ukraine, but of course, I think Russia is allowing Ukraine now to enter the European Union, but not NATO, because the reason why Russia is fighting Ukrainians in West Asia because of the possibility of Ukraine to join NATO, but of course Russia will not allow it to happen. And then some were saying that it may be the end of Putin, but of course by November, Putin will still be reinstated as the president of Russia. So is it the fall of Russia? We'll see. We still don't know because Russia is prepared for protracted prolonged warfare. I think that's their strategy. US, EU conquer Russia, but only through economic sanctions and talk shops, may be possible. And hot war, I've already mentioned that. And I think China emerges as the winner so far, because I think China is copying what the Americans are doing back then in 20th century when Europe was having world wars. The Americans just built their economy and became the most powerful economy in the world. Russia, same as what China is doing right now. We go to war, we don't care, as long as we have money, and later on we will become the leader of the world. So that's how we see it basically. Okay. Next. Okay, just a few minutes on this one. Again, we are in this third phase of our revised AFP modernization program. These are some of the strategies of the major supply services. The Army is doing strategic base in 2028. It will try focus on the cybersecurity. Of course, if you notice, we have a lot of airports already, proposed airports. So hopefully, the Air Force will also have sophisticated airplanes fighting warplanes. We've seen the movie of Tom Cruise earlier, no? So we see the winning power of the Americans already, and we hope to rely on our own capability. And then, of course, the offshore navy. We are proposing that since the Philippines is an archipelagic nation and to become a maritime power, the navy and the coast guard should take a lead. But the problem with DOTR is with the coast guard, they are under the DOTR, so the mandate would be different. But since the Coast Guard is under the DOTR and it's a civilian, then they can allow PPP, unlike the Navy, which would entail national security problem. So there's a lot of room for improvement for Coast Guard and for the Navy. So that would be the case there. Okay, I want to discuss more on that. I told you already. Next slide. Okay, last, my own recommendation for the incoming government on the future of our national security and human security, basically. That since China has regained its momentum in terms of their partnership and relations with the Philippines, that let's try to challenge also China that if they are a true friend, then let's try to allow them to help us in our modernization program, because we will see the interest of China with that. If they don't like it, then we know the reasons why they are not allowing us, then friendships will be tested there. Then I would recommend that a Philippine independent foreign policy needs strong armed forces and Coast Guard to become a maritime power. Because if you don't strengthen your armed forces and the Coast Guard, then we will become a protectorate of any major power. We don't like that to happen. And the Philippines is already a middle power. And of course, we need the Navy, Coast Guard for maritime sovereignty patrols, and of course, AFP, PCG, with the Provincial Human Organization and Information Capital, and to build a joint culture of justice. What I'm trying to drive at here is that if we are more secure, then our people would be more confident and happy, because national security, human security also talks about food security. If a country is strong, then basically we can provide more economic opportunities and to people. So there's a connection for everything. Okay, thank you. And looking forward to your questions. Madam Salamat.
Thank you, Dr. Cabalda, for your interesting and intriguing talk on our multipolar world order and where we are now with China, Russia, and the country's own modernization programs, defense operations, and policy. With that, we now proceed to the open forum. And to lead and take us through this whole process is our moderator for this morning's open forum, VP Rodrigo Jesus Mantaling, Head of our Corporate Planning Department at the Development Bank of the Philippines.
Thank you, Nick. And good morning to everyone. And thank you very much, Dr. Cabalsa, for sharing with us your insights and your knowledge. We're open now for questions for Dr. Cabalsa. For those who are here, we have mics in the middle of the room. Please just introduce yourself before your question. For those online, you can raise your hand and we will call you, or if you're not, you can put it in the chat box and we can read it for you. So anyone here right now? We have a question from that corner.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Yaso from Corporate Affairs Department. I had to come up here because the Zoom reception was not so good. That's better. Anyways, when I came up here, Mr. Cabalzo was mentioning this phrase, Russia's insecurity. So related to that, I wanted to ask questions and make some comments. So this is a four-pronged question, sorry. First, is it really Russia's insecurity? Or could we say rather that it is its desire to have its sovereignty and to preserve its culture? Because that's why it has invaded Ukraine and is doing what it's doing now. Because if it really wanted to, with its war arsenal, as one of your slides has shown, it can wipe out half of the earth if it really wanted to. Second, regarding our oil reserves and all that, this may not be answered by you. Other people can contribute, those who know. What happened to our oil reserves? We had the Malampaya Fund, right? It was a big issue like a decade or less ago. Can't we utilize that to tide us over this unusual high gasoline prices, petroleum in general? Third, I would like to suggest for us to see the other side of the coin, because isn't it that the US and the European countries have always been known to be the imperialists and invaders, and who left these countries. For example, you had Belgium invading some African countries and leaving them still underdeveloped, these African countries. France, so even the Dutch, the Netherlands. So this is something that we might have to look into, because since time immemorial, it's actually the West who have used up the natural resources of the countries that they invade and just leave them be when they're done with them. Lastly, maybe for us, for the country, for the Philippines, we can wisen up, not side with the West all the time, but maybe because we are not capable militarily wise, right? We cannot defend ourselves. Maybe it's time to strike a balance between we make friends, like we have an agreement, I don't know. China, we already had with the outgoing administration, and maybe also with Russia, because what we need, since we cannot defend ourselves, is to maybe pacify what's gonna happen. Those who are the masterminds of this, whatever is happening in the world, and preserve what we have. So we should look after ourselves and make peace with both peace and rest. That's all.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Those are beautiful questions, basically. Okay, question number one on
Russia.
on Russia, on the insecurity of Russia. Depending on whose point of view, that's the reason why, of course, we listen to the Russian point of view. They use military operations over occupation or invasion. It's a narrative. It's also a lesson on history, depending on how we write our own history or narratives. And if you listen to the Ukrainians, they would say it's an invasion because you mentioned resistance. But partly look at the context, the global context. Why Russia is behaving like that? First, look, we use the state-centric national security, the political, economic, social, cultural, scientific, environmental, and the military. If we look at the socio-cultural issue of it, actually, Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, is the capital of Mother Rus. If you watch Vikings in Netflix, and you will see the representation of the rooster, it was in Kyiv, and the people there were called Rus, Russians. So in other words, in terms of the cradle of civilization of the Russians, it was in Ukraine. I'm an anthropologist also, security anthropologist. I look at culture, basically. And it's right for Ukrainians to claim that. But it just so happened in world history, Russians became successful. It's the largest country in the world. And a nuclear power. It used to be a superpower. Naturally, if you're a citizen or a leader of the country, you have high stakes and high confidence to build up your own narrative that you are superior over others. But if you look at history, world history again, we concocted the USSR, and in the Cold War, where you have bipolar world, USSR lost. And the product would be the post-Russia, where Ukraine became also a product of that post-Russian world. Now, it just so happened that you have a revisionist leader from Vladimir Putin. And you should also study the behavior of the leader. Putin used to be part of the intel community of the KGB. and we've seen the fall of USSR. And when he became the leader of Russia, he wanted to revive the old past glory of the country. It's a very fascist perspective. Because if you're a fascist, basically based on history, you will try to revive the past glory of your country. And by doing that, you have to resort to a lot of, how would I say, realist in international relations. They call it the realist perspective, where you use military force. So depending on whose point of view, right? Now, why Russia is insecure? Because Russia is the largest country, a military power, but dwarfed by its economic capability. Russia's economy is lower than what South Korea is. Imagine that you are projecting to become a superpower, but with very low economic power. When you become a superpower, there are three criteria. Superpower concept is not a military concept, it's an economic concept. You should have strong economy, big geography, because you need your people, and strong military. Russia has those criteria, but when it comes to economics, it's far less compared to China, India, and the United States. It's a contender to becoming a superpower, but it's still questionable. So that's the insecurity of Russia. That's the reason why they wanted to claim Ukraine, because of the many ideas and dimensions of security that they have. And also because of the insecurity that Western Europe is also geared towards Russia. And most of the pipelines of the oil and gas runs through Ukraine. So if EU controls that, because EU is also supported by the Americans, and they support Ukraine also, that's the reason why Ukraine wants to win in the first phase of the war, because the Americans have become a protectionist superpower now. Look at what happened to Afghanistan. They left already to go use of because they cannot afford it anymore to control the world. They spent a lot of money in safeguarding the security of Europe. And the Europeans were enjoying it basically because they were not paying, because the Americans were paying for the security of Europe. And at such a time, you have a populist leader, Trump, who was very realist in his perspective that we should protect our own people. And that happened. That's the reason why America, US, became a inward protection superpower. So the only way they can do that is to send sophisticated military hardware to Ukraine. I think without the support of the US, Ukraine will not win in the first place. Because EU and the US and some other post-Russian states supported Ukraine in military hardware and intelligence gathering. So that was the winning formula for Ukraine. So, and of course, the strong resistance of the Ukrainians, because I would recall from friends from Ukraine, people from different parts of the world from Ukraine went back to their country to defend their territory. That's why the idea of conscript, I think by incoming President-elect Vice President Sara wanted to have that to institute conscript in the Philippines. I think it's a big issue also now. Second question, number two question on, second question on the Malampaya. I remember, sorry, Sir Tala knows me, I'm very frank and honest in my analysis. State Department also gathered us for the elections and asked some of our opinions on the issues in the West Philippines, particularly on the energy. And I remember in the conversation, the Americans were helped to invest or explore, because when you do exploration, there's no partition yet, because you will just explore. right? No partition yet. But it just so happened that we tried to invest in Malampaya, and of course now we have the windmills. I talked to some Ilocanos in Ilocos. They were saying also that even if we have the largest windmills in this place, we don't get lower rates. And they are typical issues of people because we're talking about human security. And same as true when you go to Palawan. Same issues that they will not also on how they were not expert from having all those lower rates when it comes to electricity and so on, energy sources. But I think the problem there is, I have to be honest, sometimes the problem there is within us. We enter into negotiations and then sometimes the interest of our elites are also questionable. In other words, one of the factors why the Philippines is not becoming more prosperous because sometimes we have greedy elites, and that has been a problem that we should also look at. If that's the reason why we have to consider identifying our own national interest. Because personal interest is different from national interest. Then what would be our national interest? Then we have to discount. Even amongst the military and some other stakeholders, whenever I talk to them, if I ask them what would be our national interest, they cannot even list down some of the national interest. So that's another thing. Number 3 question. Ano yung third question? It was a comment. The last question also a comment. So I'll end the way. Thank you.
I want to put this back to the context of why we are having this forum. The Development Bank of the Philippines, I see it as a buffer for both national security and human security. And it is very, very important for us in DBP, especially all of you, especially the sector heads, the group heads, the department heads, that we have the proper knowledge of what is our society and what is the knowledge that we need to have in order to carry national interests. We are not in DBP to serve the interests of our borrowers. We are here to serve the interests of the country. That is why there are only 2 banks, Land Bank and the Development Bank of the Philippines. And I have noticed in the last 6 years that we have not been really exposed outside of our comfort zone. And that is also the reason why in our Development Advocacy Committee, in our Audit and Compliance, in our Risk Oversight, in our Human Resources Committee, in our Governance Committee, we are discussing things that for me is very routinary and perhaps it is not strategic. And I am very, very happy that the presentation of Dr. Cabalsa is very relevant. Perhaps you're asking the question, ano ba, bakit tayo ini-expose dito sa mga ganitong klase? Because of mindset. Because of mindset. Because if we will have the mindset of being traditional and parochial, micro, wala na pong mangyayari sa atin. And again, I will be very, very honest. That is why my question today, I think, is this, Dr. Cabalsa. From your experience in the academe, in your studies, in your talks with different agencies, and looking at the future and looking at our past and present, what is the strategic thinking, capacity, qualifications that we should expect every employee that reaches the management and supervisory level that will really uphold the national interest in the DBP. I would like to know the qualifications in terms of strategic thinking, because for me, we have to start selecting individuals who have that mindset and thinking. We are being given a resume. We are being given the list of kung ano-anong mga qualification. Pero kung minsan, hindi yan tugma sa ating vision. Kaya po, that is my question, and you can kind of elaborate. And I am saying this and asking you so that all our DBP movers and shakers that are here personally or on Zoom, malaman nila. So that's my first question. Ano ba talaga ang qualification for somebody to be approving loans? Itong ating mga account officers. Itong mga nag-handle ng customer experience. Yung mga nandyan frontliners natin sa branch banking. Yung mga nagma-marketing. Yung mga nag-IT. Yung mga nag-evaluate ng mga compliances. What is that particular qualification of strategic thinking that we need now to require, and perhaps ask the HRMG to do more training, because we are government employees and therefore it is not that easy. So if we cannot remove, we will just have to build capacity. So ano po yun? Number two, where do you think should be now the direction of DBP after you have made this representation? We understand very well that we have an independent foreign policy, as what President Rodrigo Duterte has tried to do. We are also very aware that our capacity is not that much, that we cannot go to war against China. That's why the West Philippine Sea, we're trying to be very diplomatic about it, and that we, even if we want that arbitral ruling, hindi tayo pwede na agad-agad. And so, what do you think now? What role do you think should DBP play now as a development bank? Yun po. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Now, ang ganda ng questions niya. Okay. I'd like to start with saying that all of us should be strategic, even if you want human resources or that financial health and so on, different sections and different departments in a certain organization. Remember, I teach in all of the defense and security institutions at the National Defense College, Command and Staff College, DBP, and also in PPSC of the PFP, and also the Coast Guard. And what I like about what we offer in the DBP, not to brag about it, because I've seen all the curriculum and I'm teaching with all of these institutions, and also teach them. Combination of development and security plus governance. Because at the end of the day, we should be confronted with not only about what is happening in the world, but how we analyze it and how it impacts each one of us. Like, say, for example, we, in the state concocted national security, we allow different dimensions of political, economic, social, scientific, environmental, and political. It's a full of nation, full of government approach. But how do you elevate that into strategic level of mindsets? Different levels of thinking. The point here is that the world is shrinking now, as they call the world is a global. The world is a global village, meaning to say that every one of us are exposed to what is happening around the world, and visibly what may happen locally will have an impact also around the world. So as DBP, definitely you have to look all these different dimensions of security. even be it national security or human security. I've already mentioned the different dimensions of human security there. It's about what do we want for our country? Why the Philippines has not yet arrived as a nation state, economically speaking. Because if you try to look at it, we're like a roller coaster. We go up, down, go up. We have not yet achieved a certain level that we have arrived compared to some of our Southeast Asian countries. Let's use our ASEAN neighbors as a case study in terms of our developmental levels and how we look at security. Remember how Vietnamese and Thai were able to achieve such level when it comes to resources and agriculture. But in fact, when it comes to knowledge transfer, we taught them. They went to UPLB, we taught them, they copied our technology, they use it properly. That's a problem with us sometimes. How to become strategic is also how to enforce the laws and how to implement it properly and become agents of change of this. Because if you try to look at it, in Southeast Asia, not to brag about it, we're actually the best thinkers in the region. Our neighbors are copying our ideas. Look at Malaysia, Polynesia high school. I was in high school when that was concocted. It was concocted by a Filipino OFW and still used by the Malaysians. How they institutionalized that kind of idea and how it resulted to their own prosperity. In our country, since we have a lot of ideas, we keep of changing it, and sometimes the best practices are not nurtured and implemented properly. So we have to have the culture of enforcement and implementation, which I saw as a gap in all of the agencies that I've talked with. And starts within us. I remember when I was in Finland, I've been frequently going there from 2017 to 2019. This is where I was able to write my book on Philippinization. The things, whenever they are in Finland or abroad, when the traffic light is red, they really stop. They don't cross. And dito, nagpa-fashion model pa yung and sometimes even us, we want door-to-door transportation in our tricycles and jeepneys. How can we enforce discipline there? So it starts within you. You know, sometimes to become strategic is to follow the rules, follow the law. And we are like 120 million people. Sometimes it's so hard to enforce laws. And that is something that we have to look at also. And I think for DBP, how would we transcend them, given that, of course, the Philippines is projected to be the 14th, 18th, so it depends now. I think from 14, 16, 18th largest economy in the world by 2050. That is the projection. Then we will become an upper middle income economy. By doing that, we have to recover first from the pandemic, and then of course continue with the building, and of course with food security, because if you feed people and they are healthy, then everyone will be happy. And I think, because I also look at the military defense, whenever we have modernization program, let's look at it as a public investment. Public investment because it brings pride for our country whenever we see our armed forces strong and they can defend us. How would you imagine a country where you will see a country with sophisticated military technology and during Independence Day they will parade assets, the Ethiopian maritime terrestrial area, and you will see flying bombers of Philippine flags on and you will see those are our money. They defended us. So that should be the mindset. Not because, I would always say that the most successful countries in the world are the most insecure countries. Look at Israel. Why it developed tremendously and why it became very sophisticated when it comes to technology. Because they were surrounded by their enemies. Look at Singapore. Look at Europeans. If they don't work harder because of their harsh environment, they will die. It just so happened in the Philippines that we live in a paradise. No, the one-to-man syndrome. They would say that, in the Philippines, if you live here, even if you don't have job, you will survive. But not with the OFWs who are working so hard abroad. They will not do that. And sometimes, I just noticed, as an anthropologist also, whenever we are deployed or working abroad, we follow the rules. But when we are here, we don't follow our rules. Then there is a damaged culture here. Then let's repair it. Why? Maybe because we are comfortable in our own country or in our own house. That's why we don't follow rules. We are the masters of our own rules. That should not be. No one is entitled. If you want our country to be more progressive, then we follow the rules. There are programs from different banks. Their aim here is to help us to become more secure. Because right now we are feeling a lot of insecurities. Then let's use that insecurity as an opportunity to become more secure, more progressive. And I think one last point. Whenever I ask my students, be it grad or undergrad, 10 or 15 years from now, we will rule this country as leaders of our government and the private sector. And at the end of the semester, I will ask them, do you think that our country will become prosperous? Very few would dare to raise their hands in that confident. Some will just raise their hands so shyly. Others won't. Why? Because they don't see. Our problem here is that we don't have visions. We lack visions. We don't see ourselves in the future. What is the Philippines 10 years? Although we do that strategy, but even if we have best ideas, we don't implement it properly. So you see, all those scenarios that I've mentioned here, there are impairments, problems. Then we have to do something on that. We've been called the damaged culture. Then let's repair it. So again, enforcement, implementation, having goals and hopefully the best solutions to the many problems and securities that we have. So I can make that very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cabalsa. I am sure that there are many other people who would like to have follow-up questions. We have up to the 400 participants right now in Zoom and Facebook and right here. Unfortunately, in the interest of time, we have to move on. And so perhaps if there is time after this, you can engage Dr. Cabalsa on one-on-one, but we have to move on with the program right now. So, do we have a question from the Zoom audience? Is there anyone who typed in a question in the chat box? Or? Apparently, there are none now in the Zoom. Actually, ma'am, I have, but I think we should move on. There are a few others here, I think, who have, and I do too, but do you want to entertain one more? Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
It's really more of a comment, and I totally agree with Dr. Cabalsa when he said, why can't we follow the rules? And so rules are rules. They're not. We can do it here. So, ang tawag dyan malasakit, that kind of care. And so I always say that you don't have to be a hero Filipino. You don't have to be an OFW to be a hero Filipino. Just pick up the trash. And don't put it out in the trash. As you can see in Cebu, we're relatively clean. That's the kind of culture that we inculcate with everybody. And it starts with the young. I have nephews who will bring home candy wrappers from school because they will not throw it away if they don't see it, if they don't see a trash can. So these are some things that we can do in our own homes and in ourselves. And I totally agree with Dr. Cabalsa that it doesn't have to be a grand gesture. Those little things, the kind of malasakit that I don't, and I would like to believe that this malasakit has always been a mission or a culture within DBP. So it doesn't have to be big. And second, there was a comment on Malampaya. Malampaya is, and remember we have to start disengaging from fossil fuels. That's the reality. Kasi nauubos yan. So yan yung Malampaya. Maybe it was a big deposit 10 years ago when it was first discovered. But it's almost gone now, if not, we only have a couple of years to do. That's why, again, I go back to that self-discipline and of recycling and using. Again, it doesn't have to be a big gesture. The more you use plastic, the more energy you use, then the more effect on fossil fuel. So again, these are just little things that will become a big thing. And it should start from all of us. And we should educate the young so that, they really have a better country in terms of culture and in terms of attitude. So,
Thank you very much, Director.
Yes, I agree with the director answer, but it's a mosaic. Philippines is as any country has global phases. Like in India, it's a developed country, and also in China, same as in the Philippines. But I also believe it's not about that. Why here and there they do this? Like in Soviet you mentioned, also in Clark, they do that in Clark City. It just so happened that the community there it's a how would I put it? Because Soviet is special zone. And not all parts of the Philippines are special economic zones. That's why the challenge there is how to encourage everyone to follow this. Because of course, there are different. It's also the same as to look at I'm not patronizing any denomination, it's just the denomination. But look at INC. They were able they became very successful on how they encourage their followers to follow their rules. And they are highly organized. And we've seen their achievements. So, what I'm trying to target here is that it's not the representation of everyone. No? These are different case studies. But at the end of the day, we wanted that Filipinos will still follow rules. And of course, I agree with the director with what she said. So, thank you.
Again, Dr. Tabasco. Thank you to our questions and to Dr. Cabalza for his responses. Now let us move on to the next topic about something we can all agree in like manner as the first topic, that technology innovations is another challenge that confronts us. Our next speaker will help us answer these challenges and see what broader context is involved. He is the Vice President for the Center of Philippine Futuristics Studies and Management, a former career executive service officer with 43 years of combined government service and non-government organization affiliation, including the Development Academy of the Philippines, where he rose from the ranks to be President and CEO for 11 years, an alternate director for the National Productivity Organization of the ASEAN Productivity Organizations, and a member of the Academy at the Philippine Christian University and the Metro Digitay College. Let's all welcome Dr. Antonio Calao Jr.
Next slide. Hello. Next slide. Anyway, kanina binanggit kasi yung Development Academy of the Philippines. Kasama kami ni Dr. Chester doon. He's the younger generation and I am the outgoing generation. Nung pumasok sa SUDAP, outgoing naman. Retired. So I have 43 years in government service from the martial days, 1975 up to 2017. And all of these are all with the Development Academy of the Philippines, which, by the way, DBP created. Kayo po ang tatay namin. In fact, the DBP Conference Center in Philippine is the DBP Training Center. It is not ours. You donated it to us. Hindi nyo alam yun. Anyway, the founder of DBP is Leonidas Pirata, your chairman, your governor during that time. Kaya ako binabanggit because yung sinasabi ni Director Inday, ililink ko mamaya doon yung inaasahan niya sa inyo. No? Please use your son, your DBP, and there is that. Anak po ninyo yun. So I was there for 43 years, and as DBP president, member din ako ng, chairman ako ng Career Executive Service Board ng sa CESO. And at the same time, board member ako ng Foreign Service Institute and the Civil Service Academy. Wala din yung Civil Service. Concurrently, alternate director din po ang DEP president ng Asian Productivity Organization. So, kaya ko pinapakita yan because it's not to introduce myself, na-introduce na ako kanina. It's just giving you a perspective of what we can do. And I'll share this video later on. Next slide. Next slide. Ayun. Yun yung past. Ito yung present. I'm involved with 4 organizations. Isa po itong Futuristics Center. Okay. Where this Futuristics Center is headed by Phil Santos. And our chairman of the board is former Secretary Bobby De Ocampo, who is now with Veterans Bank. The other one is the Philippine Council for Foreign Relations. Ito po naman yung mga samahan ng mga retired ambassadors, retired military officers, puro kami retired, heads of agencies, helping the Department of Foreign Affairs crack the policies, diplomatic policies. And then we have itong sinalihan ko po, why I'm here now, yung Center for Futuristic Studies. So we're talking about the future here. Then my full time is the Center for Strategy, Enterprise, and Intelligence. And I was talking about strategic. Ito po yung center na where I belong to also. And then lastly, yung Center for Global Best Practice. Anyway, this is the present. The reason why I'm giving you this, para lang i-dovetail to dun sa topic ko ngayon. Next slide, please. Alam niyo yung kasabihang no man is an island. Right? Kinakanta natin yata yan. Palagi natin sinasabi na. Ganun din sa organizations. No organization like DBP is an island. Next slide. Yung no man is an island, it means that man is a social being. It means the need to contact and interact. It means we cannot isolate ourselves in doing things by doing things alone. No? It means we do pag tayo lang gumagawa, we do it badly. It requires help from others because we all have our limitations and we are dependent on each other. Yan pong assumption, just a no man is an island. Ganyan din po sa mga organisasyon. Okay? DBP cannot do it alone. Okay? Next slide. Ano ang nangyayari sa atin? Yung kaliwang kamay, hindi alam yung ginagawa ng kanang kamay. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing.
Yung ating mga policies, incoherent. Hindi siya, in fact, they conflict with each other. There are uncoordinated efforts and actions. May competition, may turfing, may rivalry. O aminin natin yan, totoo yan. Even within your units here. Okay? May redundant action. Paulit-ulit, we duplicate things, we duplicate efforts. And then, siyempre, kung duplicate tayo ng duplicate na ginagawa natin, you waste resources. Money, particularly money. And gawa tayo ng gawa, we do our mandate, and yet the citizen, our clients, do not see the fruits of what we're doing. They don't appreciate what we're doing, especially sa government. Dami ginagawa ng gobyerno, pero what? Sinisisi pa rin ng gobyerno. Kasi hindi nila feel. Okay, next. Next slide. Ayan. And then there's difficulty of program evaluation in terms of effectiveness and output delivery. Okay. Hindi mo tuloy makita who is responsible, no? Hindi kasi there's a need to account and access, integrate, and reutilize existing scattered big data. Ang daming data dyan. Nagkalat ang informasyon pero hindi siya nagagamit properly. There's need to standardize requirements in the integration and yung interoperability of processes and mechanisms. And lastly, increasingly complicated yung sitwasyon. Patulad yung pinakita sa inyo Dr. Chester kanina. Di ba? Geopolitics na yun. Yung nangyayari sa ibang bansa, apektado dito. Nagusog ng Russia, Ukraine, apektado tayo sa oil, mataas ang presyo. So yan po, they all interrelate. Next slide. Ngayon, meron tinatawag na governance. Yan po yung struktura at saka mga proseso na dinisenyo para ma-ensure na meron accountable for all these things. Ma-ensure na transparent yung mga nangyayari. Ma-ensure na responsive yung ating mga ginagawa. Ma-ensure na sumusunod tayo sa batas. Ma-ensure na may stability. Ma-ensure na may equality or equity. Ma-ensure na inclusive. Everybody is included. No? Ma-ensure yung empowerment and broad-based participation involved lahat. Yan po yung layunin ng governance. At yan nakikita po natin in the way we, the organizations or countries, are managed at the highest level, sa governance level, sa taas. Which includes yung systems that we do in order to do our mandate. Next slide. Ngayon, ito alamin nyo to, vertical. Imagine the triangle, vertical structure. You have your chairman of the board, chairman or whatever. Then down there, you have the janitor down there. Pero in between, you have your president, you have your vice presidents, and down the line. Yan ang horizontal governance. Lahat ng organization may vertical governance. The next slide. Dito tayo nagkukulang sa tinatawag na horizontal governance. Within the organization, ang horizontal, yung department head ng kapila. Head ka ng HR, head ka ng finance, minsan hindi nag-uusap. That's within the organization. The other form of horizontal governance is DBP and Land Bank, GSIS and SSS. Ibang organisasyon, but they have to talk to each other. National agencies have to rely on local governments. The government corporate, yan and horizontal governance. The one organization like DBP, dealing with, talking with, working with another. And within government pa lang yun, ha? What about the private sector? What about the civil society? What about the people down there in the communities? Your schools, your borrowers, your beneficiaries. All of these are part of what we call horizontal governance. Next slide. So, the idea is to combine the two. Hindi mo maalis yung vertical. Kasi may accountability, may boss, may board, may resources. But even if you do your mandate, I'll give you an example. Papangalanan mo na SSS. Nabigyan ng performance-based bonus ang SSS. Nagreklamo yung mga SSS members. May pila pa rin daw. And yet, binigyan ng bonus. Hindi feel. Okay? I don't know kung nangyayari sa inyo yun. But the point is, You have to combine both vertical and horizontal. And while you are able to do your mandate in the vertical, chances are you are not hitting, you are not serving properly the citizen and or the client. Kasi you need the other organization to fulfill that mandate. Doon pumapasok yung horizontal governance. So you have to combine the two. Next slide. So, ano yung different forms of horizontal governance? Nagdidinig na ninyo ito, hindi na bago sa yung pagdinig ito. Interactive governance, whole of governance, whole of government, whole of society, whole of nations. We know all this. Nagdidinig natin yan. Yan ang mga forms of horizontal governance. Next slide. So, sa interactive, simple lang. It means interacting with each other. The keyword is interaction. Okay, next slide. Yung whole of governance, it is the collaborative and joint efforts of government, the private sector, civil society, the business sector, and the community. In what? In decision making, in undertaking collective integrated action, and achieving shared or common goals and interests. Banggit kanina, mission time interest, individual interest, common interest. Next slide. Ano naman yung whole of government? It is the joint formal or informal undertaking performed by you guys, public officials, employees in various government agencies, whether it's national, LGU, or GOCCs like you, where in providing common solutions to problems and issues confronting us, in having coherent processes, policies and processes, and in delivering efficient and effective public good. Next slide. Ano naman yung whole of society? This is the one that collectively involves private sector, the SMEs, the civil society, mga non-government, and the church, the religious, and the indigenous people. And, basically, hindi kasama ang gobyerno dyan sa whole of society. Okay. Next slide. Ano naman yung whole of nations? This is more of a security and a military and a police term. May Interpol, International Police. Mayroong, ano ba yung just mas kabisan? The military and the police and the law enforcement sector all over the world, the CIA, the FBI, the Philippine National Police, the NBI, they now coordinate with each other. You commit a crime here, you will get arrested there, even if you go to the United States. So they now cooperate in solving, addressing common crimes, big crimes, cyber crimes, drugs, insurgency, terrorism, human trafficking, and national security. Yan yung whole of nations. Okay, next. So this slide shows you the comparison and difference of the two. I will not dwell on it now. Next slide. Ano ang features ng horizontal governance? There is shared vision, shared goals, shared objectives. May coherence in policy. May comprehensive plan. May common and collaborative and collective action. Nagkakaisa. May unified and seamless. Hindi mo makita ang action. Hindi mo alam na DBP pala gumawa nito. Na nagtulong lang yung DBP at LATBA, for example. So, may unified and seamless action. Okay? And there is what you call interagency coordination mechanism. Next. Ano ang rationale? Bakit kailangan yan? Una, when you talk about vertical governance, nagkikreate tayo ng silo. Tayo lang DBP lang. So, the rationale here is to dismantle that silo mentality. Yung bang we work in isolation. Alisin natin yung silo. We work with others. It's having a less bureaucratic, seamless government. That's another rationale. The third is we eliminate yung mga having different policies which cut across and undermine and contradict each other. and then we reduce costs, we optimize the impact. Remember, if there are two organizations or three or more working together, we minimize, we optimize the impact. We become more effective and efficient. Wala na. Mabuti na lang meron ako dito. Ano? Hanapin ko pa ngayon yan. Okay. Magkakaroon ba? And that's being prepared. Andito. Ayun. Tapos na yung rational. Now, saan natin ina-apply yan? It applies to everything we do, from visioning to missioning to functions to policies to programs and projects. Okay. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, I'm talking about that now. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay. Ito yung mga nadidinig natin. These are forms. These are the structures. We talk about interdepartmental arrangement, HR finance, interdepartmental. Kasi collaboration. Task forces, yung IATF. Yung sa COVID, may IATF. Yung sa LCAP, may IATF. Diba? Interagency collaboration. Even in the mere fact that we organize a project team or a program team, may project management, that is also a form of horizontal governance, because you get people from different departments and make them work on a project. And then you have interdepartmental partnership, cross-departmental partnership, at special purpose. Yung kini-create, but yung kini-create na bago, galing sa iba't ibang organizations. Okay? So these are what you call structural forms of horizontal governance. Next slide. Next slide. Ito pa yung iba. Oh, you are aware of cabinet clusters. Yan, nangyayari yan. We have clustering in the cabinet, di ba? May interagency committees, interagency task forces, program project management, interdepartmental committees, even yung memo of agreement. Di ba pag mawa tayo, dalawang nagpipirmahan, tatlo. That is horizontal governance. Yung mga congressional hearings, natatakot pa yung mati ng Congress hearings sa Senate kasi sinasabot tayo, no? Pero that is another form of horizontal governance. Institutional partnerships. Ito madalas yung madinig. Public-private partnership. Horizontal governance. And so, as I discussed, yung ginagawa pala natin, horizontal governance. You know, next slide. Next. Ito yung mga examples sa abroad. No? Next. Yan sa Canada. Alam niyo ba sa Canada, lahat ng first floor ng lahat ng government agencies may may Service Canada. One-stop shop lang. Doon na lahat. Sa first floor ng lahat ng government agencies. Pag yung local government lang man yan, or national, whatever. First floor. Lahat ng service. Next slide. Ganon din sa bayan. Meron silang sa Canada, guidebook. You click your computer and you will find where you want to get the service. And click it, ando na, ako mo na si service. Parang yung Shopee. Sabi niya Shopee, di ba? Ganon sila niyan. Next. Sa Australia, yung Centrelink nila, ganyan. May mobile van nga sila eh. Pag nakapark yan sa highway, puntahan mo, you can get your service in that mobile van in Australia. Next. Yan, sa Malaysia. Yung mga lumang building nila, kino-convert nila into that one-stop shop. So, walang abandoned building doon. Lahat ng building, mayroong one-stop shop. Malaysia. Next slide. Singapore, pindutan lang yan ng computer and you get your service. Next slide. India, ganyan din. Okay, move on. Next slide. Ayan, Anti-Red Tape Act is a form, ARTA is a form of horizontal governance. Next. Yung pinirmahan ng PRRD na ease of doing business is another form of horizontal governance. Next. Yung ISO, di ba? Alam niyo yung ISO, di ba QMS? Horizontal governance din yan. Next. Ganon din yung PBB, saka yung RBPMS. Wala kayong PBB kung hindi kayo papasad sa RBPMS. Right? Eh, sino nagpapatakbo? Ayun, yung mga ahensya nung. horizontal governance. Next. Yung sa NBI clearance, punta ka sa mall, meron na yan. LTO, ganun din. Next. Yung Civil Service Academy, tinan nyo ang composition ng academy. Service, DAP, DBM, again, horizontal governance. Next. Yung Foreign Service Institute, horizontal governance, andun ang UP. Bakit ka pa mag-source out ng pwede ka kumuha ng faculty sa UP? Diba? Next. Yung DAP mismo, kita nyo yung board namin, ilang ahensya yan, nasa board ng DAP. Next. Ganon din yung IATF ng COVID, interagency. Next. Yan. May pinirmahang EO, yung Whole of Nations approach. Next. Ganon din yung LCAC. This is anti-left. Next. Okay. Ito yung mga positive effects ng horizontal governance. Meron kang degree of ease of doing business. Nagiging mas friendly sa private sector. May increase in productivity, may access to information, you can may convenience in accessing and availing of service, may seamless, yung At isang mukha lang ng gobyerno. Walang DBP, walang land bank, walang kung ano man yan. Isang mukha lang ng gobyerno. The Philippine government. Next, better image for the Philippine government and satisfied citizen. And lastly, it is also rewarding for all of us. Purihin tayo, di ba? Ang ganda ng servisyo ng mga public officials. Di ba? Next. Ito naman yung negative. Ang negative effect ng horizontal governance. At may red tape pa rin, hindi mo maaalis yung red tape. Huwag natin pagalitan na sarili natin na hindi natin kaya sa red tape. Meron pa rin yan. May tendency pa rin mag-turfing kahit pa paano. Hindi mo maalis yan. May difficulty pa rin ng pinpointing accountability. Then may tendency to rely, pagka horizontal yan, akala mo, ginagawa ng kabila, yung pala walang gumagawa. Yun, nangyayari yun. And then may possibility na ipapasa mo yung trabaho mo sa iba, pero trabaho mo yun. And lastly, yung potential padding of expense. Nangyayari yan. Akala mo, may budget ka rito. Hindi mo ginawa kasi akala yung kabila may budget din for the same thing. Okay, next. Now, we have to maximize the use of horizontal governance. How? By utilizing ICT. Huwag kayo matakot in utilizing ICT. Ang interpretation kasi natin, it will mean matatanggal sa trabaho yung mga pleyado. Hindi, you can maximize digital use. Then, you systematically generate and store and analyze and apply big data. That's how to maximize. Let's make use of big data. And then we proactively think strategic or innovative. Yung outside the box, hindi yung traditional na mga solutions. We develop and sustain the culture of productivity. And then we satisfy, of course, our client, the citizen. And lastly, we invest in futures thinking. Yan yung sinasabi ni Ms. Inday kanina. We have to think futuristics. Future. Ano ba? We have to think strategic. Hindi pwede yung silo, yung ngayon, yung ito lang nakikita mo. You have to look at what potential risk will be there in the future if we do this. Yan ang nade-develop sa horizontal governance. Next. After having said all of this, yun pala yun. Okay? So that's my message. That's the learning. The point is we're doing it already. Let's maximize the use of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Calao. There are definitely numerous challenges confronting us. And thank you for your horizontal and vertical governance. Sharing, definitely we will be working to work with each other for better horizontal governance. The next presenter for the topic technology innovations, the future for food security, relative to national security, is the founder, president, and CEO of Innovate Nutrition Technologies Inc. He is a doctor of veterinary medicine by profession and a businessman, agricultural farmer. In addition, his field of expertise includes environmental and ecosystem restoration, soil bioremediation, agricultural soil and crop enhancement, biological improvement in aquaculture, and without further ado, let's hear from Dr. Narciso A. Intal.
Partners, distinguished Chairman Albert Romulo, Director Arsenas, Inday Arsenas, Brother Director Dante Liban, my friends, colleagues from the academy, valued clients, local government units, fellow members from Futuristics Center, fellow officers and members of Greece Agro Fisheries Development Corporation, fellow officers and staff of the Development Bank of the Philippines, Professor Gil Santos, Director President J.B. Bailon, Director Dr. Tony Calao, to my fellow resource speaker, Dr. Chester Cabalsa. Isang mapagpalang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Mahalaga po ang paksa na aking iambag sa ngayong umaga. It's all about technology and innovations. Nakikita niyo po sa ating slide ang palay. Ang palay ay sagisag ng pagkain ng bawat isa sa atin. Hindi lingid po sa ating lahat, tayo ay mahilig kumain ng kanin. And rice is the largest single use of land for producing the food. And in fact, rice is nearly all produced in Asia, about 90%. Why rice again? Ang paksa po natin ngayon ay nakapatungkol po lahat sa ating mga magsasaka, sa ating mga rice farmers na nasa mga kabutiran, na siyang naghahanda ng ating pagkain para maging bigas na ating kakainin. Ako po ay isang anak ng isang magsasaka from Pampanga, si Apong Ibe. And I learned a lot from the hardships of my father being a farmer, a rice farmer. Nito pong nakarang 3-4 na taon in my journey to my entrepreneurial spirits and activities in the field as a businessman, as a scientist, as a practical environmentalist, I learned the hardships of a true farmer. Ang topic ko po ay nakahati sa 3 bahagi. Una pong bahagi ay introduction ng technology na ating ipipresenta, isang produkto na isang kaaya-ayang produkto. I call it the amazing quantum technology. I will present also to you the innovations, why it is useful, why it is so needed by mankind, and why it is needed to our Philippine agriculture to level up our agricultural practices. I will also present to you the creator or the inventor of this amazing, incredible technological intervention. On my part 2, I will touch the different agricultural technological applications, particularly in rice farming nationwide, from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. I will present different technical farm demonstrations as applied by an actual farmer. In my 3rd part, I will show to you proofs of concepts, different rice studies, testimonials, or case studies or success stories of different rice farmers nationwide. And lastly, I will present to you our milestone, the partnership between Innovative Nutrition Technologies and the biggest seed producer and rice miller in the Philippines by the name SL AgTech Corporation. Technology. When we say technology, to define, or simply put, it is the practical application of knowledge, especially in a particular area. When we say innovation, it is the implementation of a new or significantly changed product. Before we start this topic, may I invite everyone for a little reflection, a short reflection, which is related and so important to all of us. Let's start with an enlightenment or inspiration coming from the Holy Bible, the Old Testament, in the book of the Genesis, chapter 41, verses 46 up to 257. May the Lord be upon our minds, upon our hearts, and upon our heart, that we may receive this message from the Bible. I will not read this Bible, the parts, but I will just summarize the contents. It is about the Joseph story of how he successfully managed the food crisis in Egypt. And it's also about Joseph's response to hunger. It is about Joseph relieving the poverty of Egypt's people. In this story of Joseph, he was able to earn the honorific title, very discerning and wise, because he went beyond promises to alleviate hunger and famine. He managed to prevent it through careful planning, storing, and withholding from the Egyptian portions of their harvest during years of plenty. We should be like Joseph. Joseph is a visionary, a man with a powerful capacity for imagining a future. He is a futuristic, entirely unlike the reality before him. And he was able to skillfully interpret the Pharaoh's dreams. That's why he was called the interpreter of dreams, or the dreamer. He dreamed of cows and sheep, and he sees 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. Joseph was discerning because he possessed the administrative talent of distributing food to the Egyptian families based on their individual size and needs during the 7 years of bounty. He was so wise because he had the technology to store food for long periods of time without it rotting or being eaten by moths or rodents. We need a Saint Joseph, a wise man, at the present time, because we are now seeking the rightful person who will manage the Department of Agriculture. I think you should possess the skills and the talents and the wisdom of Saint Joseph. Ladies and gentlemen, my friends, before we start the topic, may I revisit the Philippine Development Plan conceived between 2017 to 22 to give us a briefer or a background on where we are going as a development country. Ay, naksyon. Ngayon. According to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, or the UNCTAD, we live at a pace or at a time of technological change that is unprecedented in its pace, scope, and depth of impact. Harnessing that progress is the smart path for the international community to deliver our 2030 agenda for people, peers, and prosperity. Frontier technologies hold the promise to revive productivity and make plentiful resources available to end poverty for good, enables more sustainable patterns of growth, and mitigate or even reverse decades of environmental degradation. But technological change and innovation need to be directed towards inclusive and sustainable outcome from a purposeful effort by our government in collaboration with all civil society, businesses, and the academics. What is food security? Food security, simply put, is the state of having reliable access to a sufficient quantity of affordable and nutritious food. And what do we mean by food security as defined by FAO as when all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and commitment in return and healthy life. And what is food security and why is it important? It's because it carries significant benefits for human health, but also serves as the basis to achieve sustained economic growth. Here are some of the key frontier technologies and their potential contributions to sustainable development. I will mention the first frontier technology that we espouse, the bioremediation in our ecosystems and crop agriculture, using the quantum growth biotechnology for crop enhancement. And the next is the microbe lift technology. The other technologies are very well known to you, from big data to satellites to drones to 3D printing and blockchains. What is bioremediation? When we say bioremediation, we think of biostimulation and bioaugmentation, or the involvement of the modification of the environment, stimulating existing microorganisms capable of bioremediation. Bioaugmentation, then, is the introduction of a group of natural microbial strains or a genetically engineered variant to treat a contaminated soil or water. When we say biological systems, we require microbes for the removal of organic matter. And we need equipment to support bacterial growth. And we need diverse bacteria consortium for effective waste degradation. Combining these two, this is bioremediation. Next, please. In this diagram, this is the diagram which exemplifies the different biogeochemical cycles of microbe lift technology involving the remediation of organic sulfur, the remediation of organic carbon, remediation of organic nitrogen, and the remediation of heavy metals, remediation of different diseases or pathogens, and the remediation of different biogas enhancements. This is ecological laboratories. These ecological laboratories has been in the biotechnology research and development for almost 41 years. It is headquarters it is headquartered in Florida, USA, and its primary markets are wastewater and polluted environment rehabilitation, commercial aquaculture, and crop agriculture. In the Philippines, Innovative Nutrition Technologies, which I manage, is the Philippines exclusive distributor. These are our technologies or innovative products, microbe-lift and quantum for soil remediation. The microbe-lift series of products are for ecosystem restoration. And this is the state-of-the-art production facility in Florida. Now we will go now to the quantum growth technology for crop agriculture. This is an amazing technology that has been certified, registered at the Bureau of Fertilizer and Pesticide Authority 2 years ago. What is quantum growth? Quantum growth has the characteristics of a bioremediation, of a biofertilization, of a biostimulation, of a biocontrol, and biomitigation. Quantum growth is the way forward to level up our Philippine agriculture. It must be a new thinking, and it must be the new paradigm in soil regeneration and bringing back our soil health. Restoring soil health is so crucial and is the key to abundant harvest and high profits for our rice farmers. Why we are different in this type of technology? This technology possesses or contains photosynthetic bacteria and vegetative cultures. It is shelf stable for 3 years. It has a functional diversity of different microbial consortia. It undergoes a different fermentation process with selective adaptation and is so versatile. Quantum growth light as a product or as a technology is a unique proprietary consortium of different select photosynthetic microbes and natural growth factors. These are the components, the different microbes. The next quantum growth series of product is the quantum VSC, or the Vegetative Spore Consortium. It is a wide-ranging microbial consortium with light, and it has the ability to break down accumulated organics, tuts, black layer, and detritus. What benefits we can are derived from quantum? The first benefit for quantum growth is the increase in nutrient bioavailability for the plant. The growth hormone production is very crucial. The reduction in need for exudates, increased photosynthesis, soil detoxification, mycorrhizal growth promotion, improved pathogen resistance, improved drought resistance, improved plant vigor, enhanced plant and root development, control of fertilizer runoff, water retention and production, increased yield, nutrient storage, a faster seed germination, and increased Brix levels. Where does quantum work? Microbes are everywhere. They are at the foliar surface of every plant. They are at the root surfaces, and they are within the bulk soils. And how do they work? They work for nutrient cycling. They work for the formation of soil structures. They work for suppressing the weeds. And they work for inhibiting pests and diseases. And they work for soil carbon sequestration. Their mode of actions is more on soil quality, soil detoxification, phytohormones, and nutrient bioavailability. This is the core technology that is unsurpassed for this innovation. Quantum growth possesses bacterial photosynthetic bacteria. Ang mga halaman po ay nangangailangan ng sapat na sunlight na kailangan palakihin, no? Kahit na anong klaseng halaman. At ang mga bakterya ang nagbibigay ng extra radiant energy, no? So this radiant energy coming from the sun, which absorbs more chlorophyll, no, it absorbs more radiant energy coming from the sun, makes the plant grow more bigger and productive. In the final analysis of the bacterial photosynthesis, water is created, thereby limiting the use of water in irrigation. So we are able to create water during photosynthesis of any plant. Now we come to a close. As I've said, quantum growths have been tested, verified, proven in the different areas of the Philippines, wherein we conducted different pilot trials beginning 2017 up to 2019. In these trials, we chose Pampanga, Nueva Ecija, Cagayan, Sorsogon, Zamboanga del Sur, Agustan, and other, Sorsogon, Cagayan. Yeah. There were almost 20 farms tested. And out of these 20 farms, rice trial farms we tested, have been producing a much higher rice harvest in the figure of 6.35 hectares or tons or yield per hectare. 6.35 tons yield per hectare from a national statistics yield of 4.72, which means a yield per hectare difference or advantage in the innovation is 1 ton and 63 tons or 1.63 tons with a percentage difference of 35% and a production cost across average of just 7 pesos and 83 centavos. Comparatively, comparing the performances, this is the final graph. In this graph, we were able to reduce the fertilizer, the pesticide, herbicide usage from 100% to 50%. This is the biggest advantage now that the farmer can avail. So as we all know, fertilizer is being imported and we are nearing shortage of this kind of nutrient. So the farmer can now access quantum growth as a way to supplement or to enhance nutrition by way of using microbes or the biofertilizers. This successful rice farmer from Pampanga, si Kuya Boy Pangan, from San Simon, nagsimula po siyang gumamit ng quantum gross. Petsang Disyembre, petsang Marso, taong 2018. Before he started our quantum gross in 2017, nakakakuha na po si Kuya Boy ng almost 7 tons per hectare or 6.9 tons per hectare. He was using then an inbred seed variety of RC22, which have been propagated by the field rice. At that particular period, 5 years ago, 11 bags of inorganic fertilizer ang kanyang ginagamit. So, when he initiated using our quantum from March 2018 to March 2020, he started gaining a gradual ascent of the production from 6.9 tons to 9.9 tons to 4.7 tons. There was flooding then to 10.5 tons to 11.6 tons to 12.26 tons to 13.10 tons. This is an amazing feat for a central Luzon farmer. Saan po niya nire-relate ang kanyang success dito? Ang success po niyang sinabi, ang sabi po niya, ako hindi na gumagamit ng mga lason. Ang ibig po niya sabihin, mga insecticides, mga chemicals, na different chemicals. He was able to reduce chemical inputs by 50%, not only on fertilizers, but also pesticides. Now, in the year of March 2020, a dry season, he was awarded the top 6 rice farmer achiever in the whole of Philippines by SL Agritech Corporation. So kudos to Sir Boy Pangan. He is our first. He was our first user, no, and attesting the usefulness of quantum gross in rice production. Next, now, just this year, we had a partnership with SL Agritech Corporation, wherein quantum growth was tested in Apayao, in the Cordillera region. If you can see the fresh yield using quantum growth, the farmer was able to produce 10 tons as against 7.5 tons of their normal production yield, with a difference of 35, with an increase in yield of 35%. With the cost of production per kilo from 4.15, no, from 6.49, he was able to reduce his cost of production to 4.15 pesos. So all in all, there was a 36% decrease in the cost of production. This means to say that quantum growth, regardless of location, area, practice, it can increase productivity of a particular rice land. This is an efficacy test of quantum or the biofertilizers on the growth and yield of rice. This test is a scientific, was tested on a very scientific approach. There was a RCVD, random design, involving 20 plots. In summary of this scientific approach, the random design, treatment number 10, the first treatment, yielded a fresh weight of 8 tons with a net income of 84,000 pesos. This means quantum light and quantum VSC in all treatments have significant changes, significant impacts on the income and the yield per se. Next, please. Okay, some of our farmers showing their actual manifested quantum growth. Another from Cotabato. Now, this quantum growth study were undertaken by SL Agritech Corporation nationwide in 8 trial sites with treated and untreated varieties, the hybrid varieties from 2020 to 2021, from Isabela to Abusan. Note that the treated varieties, treated farms had an increase of almost 0.88 ton from 8.19 to 9.07 metric tons per hectare. Another testimonial from Bocofanco trial results. They have regenerative rice farming systems using quantum growth. So, in summary, Bocofanco gained a 1.93 tons per hectare between before and after, between previous crop and new crop harvest. So the increase from my computation was an average of 36%, more or less the same with the previous ones. Now, finally, this is the milestone that we cherish. From 2020, we had a MOA signing on farm techno demonstrations in the Philippines between me, myself, and Dr. Henry Bon Leong Lim, the president of First Chinese Filipino Chambers of Commerce in the Philippines. In this MOA signing, we set objectives, we set methodologies, and we set a timeline of 2 years. Now, if they will succeed in, and we trying to prove that our technology innovation works, they will find an agreement of a distribution, a nationwide distribution of quantum growth. Now, finally, we already backed the 2022 MOA signing between the Executive Vice President, the daughter of billionaire Dr. Henry Michel Lin Danke. And these are the pictures that attested this success. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. And for the question and answer, may I ask my friend from the audience, from the panel, Attorney Orex Mauricio, to be a co-resource person for your questions to be answered. Attorney Mauricio, please take the floor when there is a question. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Intal. That is indeed quite informative. And given this interesting topic, we will now proceed to our open forum. May I call on the moderator for this session, DBP Dexter Tan, Head of Technology Innovations Under Management and IT Planning Unit, Development Bank of the Philippines. For our guests joining virtually, we will be having a working lunch session. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
to those present here, the Bulwagan ng DBP, and to those who are online via Zoom and Teams. Good morning to all of you. In terms of, first, I think the technology in terms of the sharing of Dr. Antonio Rojas in terms of the in terms of the governance, horizontal and vertical. Actually, I took some very good inputs there, and then the Philippines, tayo bilang tao, we're very interactive, no? And we do a lot of sharing. In fact, we are the number one in the world spending time online, more than 10 hours a day. More than 10 hours a day. I just hope that we use that time in the right context. No? And thank you for that information and then learnings sa governance, you know. And the most important as well in terms of food security, the first thing that comes into my mind is, of course, as Director Intal have shared with us, is the rice, our staple food. No? On my own recent research, there are two major factors that force us to import rice. No? One is geography. Tataka ko, bakit geography? Yung pala, we lack large river deltas. No? And then that's a big problem as well, growing rice, growing palay. No? And then some of our lands are actually being developed and converted to subdivisions and commercial spaces. That's another thing. No? And then that's a huge issue that we need to solve. Another thing is our population growth. We are growing and expected to grow 1.4 million every year in the next 3 years. So right now, 2011, 2022, we are about 111 million as per PSA. 111 million ang population natin right now. And in the next 3 years, 2025, we will be reaching 115 million. No? And 2 decades after, we will be reaching 142 million. No? So, looking at the consumption of rice, no, nalaman ko that every person, every Filipino, consume about 118 kilograms a year of rice, or 2 1/4 kabans of rice a year. Bawat isa sa atin. No? So yung iba, nag-only rice pa. Hindi ko alam, may extra pa doon. No? And that's the factors that affect, no? Bakit tayo nag-i-import. There was a time pala, early 70s, nag-export din tayo, but very short time lang. No? Based on history, talaga important na pala tayo ng rice. And then, that's a big question sa akin. No? Personally, bakit? And we're saying that agriculture is our number one focus. And we are capable of producing a lot of food for the country and crops. No? So how can we solve the rice crisis? No? So siguro nasagot ni Dr. Intal one of the solution, no? Earlier. What we need is soil regeneration. Okay, and that's one of the very good technology to adapt, no, for the Philippines. And another thing is that I would suggest is basically maybe more use of technology. Kanina, part of the sharing of Dr. Intal is yung soil regenerations, which I think we can
relate to nanotechnology in terms of nano fertilizers. No? And then that one, another one is Internet of Things. No? Sensors. We need to monitor in real time the quality of air, the environmental aspects as well. Okay, so there are things that we need to fully understand more on what are the right technologies. No? So yun mga nakikita kong technology personally, and then satellite technology. Did you know that satellite technology now can actually sense, no, and then be able to detect if there are pests within the plants below in the ground from space, huh? So that technology as well is a very good addition into that. And maybe I will have a question kay Dr. Intal, no? Just a follow-up.
Yeah.
What core, what can the various facets of food security? What are the various facets of food security, Dr. Intal? If you can further enhance that or answer that, or maybe Attorney Horace Mauricio here.
Good afternoon again. I am not Dr. Indal, nor I am Professor Santos. I'm Attorney Mauricio. Okay. Regarding the point raised by Dexter, I'll have to make a reference to vertical governance raised by Professor Tony Calab. While we might have good policies, many of the policies in government may not be coherent. They might be conflicting with one another. There's mention was made of turfism. My turf, I will protect against all others. But then with the present food security problem facing the world, maybe there is again an opportunity to make the policies of the government more coherent. Also make the policies regarding agriculture more heard. That would be the framework that may be pursued in addressing on the macro level, food security, because the micro on the ground in the Philippines, we follow what the national, even local governments dictate. There is such a thing as cultural practices, even if we might have the innovation technologies that will deliver us from 4 metric tons of palay per hectare to as much as 13 metric tons of palay per harvest. There is reluctance to accept innovation. These innovations presented by Dr. Quintal have been around for the last how many years? I am passionate about this because I am a farmer. I dirty my hands. I love doing that. I work with the soil. One thing that the innovation presented by Dr. Quintal was he did mention about microorganisms helping the plants grow. While it's available, nobody seems to be focusing on it. Why am I talking about microorganisms making the plants grow? I'll give you an example. If my memory serves me right, plants can only, on the average, absorb 3% of sunlight. But without sunlight, most plants will die. They will not exist. 3% only is used by plants. But with microorganisms from technology, that is multiplied how many times more? And that is what is available on the ground. But again, this is nothing if we do not have a long-term, again, long-term Dexter. It's not based on administration. It has to be long-term plans for the country based on reliable facts and data.
Thank you, Director Reyes, Attorney Reyes. Ma'am Inday?
Can I ask VP Mandarin? We did a roundtable discussion, remember, on agriculture and agricultural modernization with SPG, Ronald. Do you remember that? And I think it's a good time to share it with Dr. Mauricio, Attorney Mauricio, Dr. Cabalsa, and Dr. Intal there, and Dr. Calao. Perhaps you can either VP Mandarin or SDP Ronald Capora, you can enlighten us. Oji, please, no? Please enlighten us on what DBP did on agricultural modernization, what were the results of the roundtable discussions, and perhaps answer the query is why is it that not so accepting the technology innovations, and why is it that we are still importing rice? Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity, Director. We conducted a roundtable discussion involving several stakeholders in the agriculture industry, from government and non-government, from the private sector as well, involving people in the academia, practitioners, etc. And we gathered all their insights on the current state of agriculture in the Philippines, hoping to put together their ideas and create possible interventions to improve this for the country. And we did hear a lot of their ideas and interventions. For example, the Department of Agriculture had this, the Department of Agrarian Reform had this, and there were several cooperatives that spoke as well. And when we look at these individually, they work, but most of them were thinking within their scopes of influence or their scopes of knowledge. And what we thought was important was to look at it from a strategic point of view, a holistic point of view, and to look at it as a system that had interactions with each other, rather than look. Think that way, then there are inefficiencies perhaps in the way that the synergies work.
Can you tell us what we recommended to the Senate Committee on Agriculture?
May I respond to that? Actually, the roundtable discussion is supposed to be a proposition that DBP will put out in in the open, not just confine it within the bank, but we have not yet made that map. So our paper actually, as OG was saying, discussed the inefficiencies, the weaknesses, and even the strengths and the best practices in the agricultural sector. And when we speak about agriculture, it's not just farming, it's not just fishery, it includes livestock production. So there are several segments in the agricultural value chain that we all considered during the forum. So ma'am, as far as our recommendations that we have not yet put out in the open, so there are revisions to policies, there are laws that need to be amended, there are interactions within the government that need to be cemented or integrated. There are best practices already observed by some farming communities that can be replicated in other communities and even maybe in the entire archipelago. So maybe with the permission of the president and the board, we can share this output of DBP, and this can be a take-off point for the coming administration. So it's quite a substantive, lengthy paper, but it's also written in a succinct way. It's easy to read. So it might be a good publication.
What is the position of DBP on agrarian reform? Do we already accept CLOAS as collateral? And if we do not accept CLOAS as collateral, what kind of REM collaterals do we accept for agriculture? I think it's important for our guests to listen to this, because this is an opportunity also for us to dialogue. Because one of the big issues in agriculture is financing. And financing is not going to happen if the banks do not get the proper security. And one of the pillars of agriculture is land. Okay, and I was just mentioning to Dr. Cabalsa that Cambodia government actually offered for the Philippines to allow them to plant 1 million hectares for us for rice sufficiency. But that means planting rice in Cambodia using Cambodian farmers, no? So I think the issue of land availability is very important, no? So what is the position of DBP on first, agrarian reform? Because that's important for them to know. Second, how about our land REM? So if someone is going to borrow money to finance 1 million hectares of rice, what would that entail for them? Thank you.
It's a difficult question, foremost because I'm not a credit person.
I see the credit persons here. I don't know if Paul is
yes,
here. Des is here. Okay, so I just need to put this on the table, no? Because I would like, Paul is there pala, and Nolly is there, you guys, no? So I think it's important for Dr. Calao and Attorney Santos and for Dr. Cabalsa to know more about this, because this is an important follow-through for us. Thank you.
But just to maybe lay down my limited perspective on this, I believe DBP is not into collateralized financing. So we look for most of the value of a project, diba? And a project that has value actually eventually would have cash flows to be able to repay DBP. So collateral is our second way out, no? But we're interested in the project becoming profitable and eventually the borrower being able to service the loan. But maybe EB people would have more things to add.
Thank you, BP. OG Mataring and SBP Ronald Tipora.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes.
I think it's more what Ronald has mentioned, it's more on the project financing. Because as we look at the value of what is to be proposed, then we look at that project proposition in terms of its value so that it should be sustainable enough, so that it should be able to generate those cash for it to be able to pay out the loan. After all, there's a need to really have that cash generation in terms of its operation. So at the end of the day, that project proposition or proposal should be able to be sustainable, and we don't just look at the project proposal in terms of its collateral value. We look at the project proposal in terms of what it should be able to sustain, what it should be able to provide in terms of the community, in terms of the farmers themselves, or those beneficiaries, those people who benefit out of the project itself. So it means we don't look at as I think as Ronald's mentioned, it's just a second way out in terms of that REM. We look at more on the value of that project proposal.
Is that how we are financing SL Agritech? I think SL Agritech is a client of
yes, it is a client of us.
Because SL Agritech was mentioned, and I know that SL Agritech is heavily financed by DBP, no? Yeah. So is that how we are financing SL Agritech?
I think I'd rather a bit from our corporate because they're handling right now, ma'am, the projects of SL Agritech. May I just refer to you to
just give us something that can be for public consumption. Raquel, please.
Raquel.
I know that we have confidentiality clauses, so I just want to just let our friends who will be eventually helping us in our thinking process for DBP strategic thinking know more about us. No? And Dr. Intal is also on the line because he was saying that SL Agritech is like a miracle, a miracle, So thank you. Yes, thank you, Raquel. Yes, please.
They have good technology for actually, ma'am, we're financing the working capital. Hello. Yeah. Actually, ma'am, we're financing their working capital. So we finance how most of the farms that SL Agritech is supporting. They have contract growing. For example, in Davao, they have around 650 hectares. No? They have a contract growing contract with them. No? So they supply all the inputs, all the needs of the farmers, no? So they can plant and harvest, and then after harvesting, they'll buy all the seeds or the rice. No? That's where we come in. So we give them working capital so they'll be able to buy as much of the harvest that they're supporting. But we don't have any for confidential.
May I ask
but
what?
we also have a terminal facility where we finance a rice mill. That in that aspect, ma'am, considering that it's a project financing, so we require them work collateral.
Yes, I'm not aware of the details, but from a very generic standpoint, it's possible for the bank to give out loans based on projected income only, without security. Without security now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's based on how the company is. So we assess on the financial performance of that company, the revenue that they're generating, the track record. SL Agritech is already, been in that industry for many times. SL Agritech is a borrower of DBP since 2004, 2007.
Yes, I'm raising this point because many agri firms shy away from bank loans. Everybody knows that. because among other things, banks would like to give up loans using farmland as collateral. I was connected with the Veterans Bank, and the practice of banks, I was told, was to just pay the agro penalty. It's cheaper because precisely farmers cannot pay. Most farmers cannot pay, and what will the bank do with all the land that they will have to foreclose? So you're saying that it's possible based on history, business history, and projections. A firm may secure a loan from the bank.
Also, they have the credit standing,
Yes,
how they
yes.
manage all their credits.
That would come out in the bank, the client's history.
Of that value.
Interesting.
Yes.
Thank you.
So to be future-proof, Attorney Horex, what do you think? Is this something that DBP should pursue? Or is this something that, because this is important for our marketing, is this a practice that is future-proofed? Or do you think that we should require some kind of a security? I mean, to level the playing field, no, because this is only one company, but in a general policy for our credit, what do you think?
Personal opinion, I think it is a field which the bank should consider, because even national government believes that the agro law doesn't work. The agricultural sector is being left behind without financing. Given them what little I know of the DBP's mission vision, national development, that would be in line. But again, DBP should also secure itself from bad loans, which is part of business. So, given that situation, there would be, if I were in your shoes, I would place a lot of emphasis on the client's history. Client's history, credit history, projections, not just any feasibility study, but well-done feasibility studies to protect the bank. But still, of course, I admit there will still be risks.
How much does the agricultural sector need for us to be food sufficient?
Unfortunately, I am not in a position to say. But it might be off tangent, but really, the food security problem affects the whole world. And if anything can be done, the earliest possible time it will take effect to be 6 months later. We cannot tell people not to eat for 6 months. 6 months is the minimum period of time for for harvesting crops. I'm not even talking about long-term agricultural development. Just harvesting of existing crops, 6 months. So a lot is needed, really, not only in terms of money, but in terms of coherent long-term government policies. Especially, I was just talking to Dexter a while ago. One of my frustrations is long-term programs of the government are not pursued, unfortunately. They remain on paper, and very sad to say, after one administration, it is left on paper. Just because it is associated with a former politician, sayang talaga. You know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Harris, Mamiday, and MVP Paul Lazaro. So Since may problem tayo, I have another question. Since may problem po tayo in terms of land, no? And there's an alternative way of farming, which is the vertical approach naman, no? Is it possible, maybe it's not sustainable, but it can augment, at least in a way, yung issue natin? Tony Horace?
Vertical farming is an option. But remember, we have land actually in the Philippines, but we don't use the land. Really, we do not optimize. We use for, if it's intended for agriculture, we don't optimize. We wait for the market value to rise, then it's sold. Even the agrarian reform program actually is a failure. Pass it on to the farmers, they will be more productive. Guess what? When it was passed on to the farmers, they sell. I'm talking from experience. I am a lawyer dealing with the land issues. That is my specialization. So there goes productivity. And I'm not really talking about limiting it only to agricultural productivity. The land use is corrupted. It is used for other purposes. So I'm just saying the resources are there. Why not we make use of what we have? It does not mean not considering vertical farming. It is good, actually, very good. But that means capital again. In the Philippines, one of our problems would be the lack or insufficiency of capital. Notice that in the proponents of vertical gardening are the Western countries. Why? Because most of them have the three seasons in a year. 4 seasons, I'm sorry. That is why they have to make use of vertical gardening so as to be not affected by the weather. We do not have that problem in the Philippines. We do not have that problem. But we lack a lot of further inputs, however, to include, again, government programs, long-term government programs that will be followed.
Thank you, Tony Horace. Maybe I will open some questions from online attendees that we have from Zoom. Sir Nonoy, do we have any questions from our online attendees from Zoom or anyone from here who wants to ask more questions?
I think the Yusek Vicena of the Department of Agriculture is raising hand. I mean, as the Zoom.
Okay.
Sir, would you like to ask your question? Yusek Vicena.
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Just a few points lang. Number one, just 2 or 3 points here. Number one is that we are talking about food security. No, medyo ironic because when we talk of food security, it's really our farmers that are not food secure because of their poverty. That's number one. We need to be able to assist them some more. But our big problem here in the Philippines is point number two. We are a country of 10 to 11 million farmers with only 1% of the budget of the government devoted to them compared to our counterparts in the other countries. Around ASEAN, 3 to 6% of their national budgets go to agriculture. So napakahirap po. We are a bureaucracy here in the department of 34,000 employees, half of whom are not even permanent. No? And we're trying to serve 10 to 11 million farmers all over the country. We have been devolved. Much of the agency's original organization has been devolved almost 30 years ago, I think more than 30 years ago already, 1991. So what we're just trying to say is that there is a need for us to provide some more attention and support to our agriculture sector in this coming administration. We need to be able to organize them some more, because I was checking with our groups here inside the DA, and you know what, there are only roughly 700 to 1,000 organized farmers all over the country. When I say organized, these are the cooperatives that can be considered as going concern. You know? And if you multiply, let's say 1,000 cooperatives by maybe 100 to 200 members, then we're only talking less than 500,000 people, less than 500,000 farmers and fishers. When we're trying to reach out to 10 to 11 million farmers, so talagang napakarami sa ating mga farmers are on their own with very limited support and very limited access to credit and to technology, and in an environment where LGUs are not even providing priority to them. If you check many of our LGUs, even their own municipal agriculturists are sometimes not agriculturists, but nurses and other professions. And I think we really need to give our farmers and fishers primary attention and priority in terms of new programs in the coming administration. We need a lot of support for them, and we're very happy that I'm very happy to note that the DBP is providing extra attention for our farmers and fishers. But again, I would like to highlight our Secretary Dar's major agenda for our farming sectors. No? We call it the F2C2, F, farmers and fisheries, clustering and consolidation as a major national direction. No? So we would like your help also. When we say clustering and consolidation, we would like to encourage, and we would like to really partner with everybody who can help us form our farmers and fishers into groups and clusters, with each group with a professional manager, an agriculturist at that, kung pwede, or any professional manager, kasi kung minsan all they need is guidance in terms of management. Our farmers can probably better, can better adapt in newer technologies, newer ways of doing things to improve and increase their productivity. And I think we also need to get out of these difficulties of not being able to reach them, and we need to encourage our LGUs to be very active in terms of having their own agriculture development plans and programs, which we haven't been seeing actually. And that is one of the things that we need to also prioritize here in the department, how to help our LGUs prepare their agriculture development plans. So yun lang po, some points. Maraming salamat. Thank you.
Thank you, DA Yusek Becerra. Our director, Lourdes Arsenas, wants to ask a question to you.
Hi, Yusek RB. Thank you so much for joining. I'm happy to see you. Yusek RB, I have a question. What is the impact on the DA with the Mandanas ruling? Because that means that how many % of the national budget for DA will be lost with the Mandanas ruling, and how will that impact the delivery of services in the DA? And then, do you think the local government is prepared to do what you're doing in the DA? Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Madam Inday. Actually, my colleagues here are very much worried about the Mandanas ruling. Well, I'm not. Personally, I'm not. Kasi what we need to do is to assist the LGUs so that so that they can provide more attention to their farming and fishing sectors. Actually, we have tried to dialogue with our LGUs through a Senate hearing that was conducted last year by Senator Villar, and we have seen that the leagues of the leaders of our LGUs are opposing any pakikialam from the national government agencies as to what will happen with their resources after the Mandanas ruling. And so I think the best approach for national government agencies with respect to the Mandanas ruling is for us to convince our LGUs to partner with the national agencies such as the Department of Agriculture in developing their particular sectors where we can assist them. And I think that should be the approach also. Strengthen partnerships between national and local. Of course, there are those who are trying to argue for renationalization of some of these functions, such as there are some of us within the department saying that the agriculture sector has not really developed far enough because of the devolution of many of our agriculture organization to the LGUs and the lack of resources. I mean, compared to other countries kasi, our the agriculture department ay isa sa mga lowest in terms of percentage share in the national budget, and we would like to lobby later on for more resources to the agriculture sector. But then again, what I would like to point out some more is that our effort to really organize our farmers into better and more viable producers organizations can really help if this is going to be I hope this will be the direction of the incoming administration, and I hope that we can also convince more players in the financing sector, DBP in particular, and of course the rural banks too, to give a lot of emphasis to our organized farmers and fishers. We need to, but this is really a lot of catching up. No? Kasi napakakunti lang sa ating 10 to 11 million farmers ang what I would call organized into going concern enterprises. We need to help them. Thank you.
Can I ask Dr. Cabalsas to comment on Yusek Vicera's statement as far as your national security, is concerned, human security?
Yes, thank you for that. I think when it comes to how it was extended to Harper, we can say that the law, when it was crafted, it was very, napakaganda yung pagkakasulat. But of course, the problem there lies on how to implement it properly. And I think it has become a national security issue because the Philippines is blessed with our geography, and also it's an agricultural country at the same time. And that is a problem also in terms of how we feed our people, because the human development index comes from poverty, we still have a high incidence of poverty and so on. So these are some of the fundamental environment
aspects that we have to look at. But I guess I agree with Yusek that of course we have to invest also on agriculture because this will resolve our problem when it comes to this. I must agree with which you already mentioned that when we talk about agriculture here, it's not only about farming and aquaculture and of course other stuff. We have to consider as plants here. And since the world is also changing, of course, we see a lot of conflicts. Naturally, we need to think of innovative policies of how we feed people. Because once people get hungry, the more it will create conflicts. And we don't want that to happen. And now we see some potential in terms of agricultural technology and agricultural science. I try to consider also some insecure countries where they were able to transform their land into more progressive and innovative lands like Israel. Imagine that. No, we lack arable lands, but we were able to feed the people. Look at India and China. They have the population, but we will feed them. No? There was a time when India suffered famine also in the 1950s. That's the reason why Erie was founded because of that. So in a way, we have a lot of varieties of rice here and technology, knowledge, and so on. And as mentioned, we have lands also, but the way we should utilize and optimize our land should be dealt cleverly because we are an archipelagic compared to Thailand and Vietnam, where they have a delta and of course bigger arable lands compared to the Philippines. But despite all of these things, we should invest on technology, and of course invest on the farmers and the fisher folks because they are our national interest. Because our country need them and we need to feed people. Because once you have a strong food security that deals with human security, then we will have naturally a stronger national security. So you see all those interrelatedness in all these aspects. So that would be my answer for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cabasa. And yeah, appreciate the candidness in this very informative session, insightful, valuable lessons shared by our distinguished guest speakers this morning. Nick, we'll turn this over to you.
Thank you, Dexter, and thank you again to our speakers and to all those who asked questions. Now, to give us a brief message in today's presentation, may I call on one of DBP's own. He was appointed to the DBP board in August 2021 and sits as the chairperson of the Development Advocacy Committee with an extensive record in public service, such as city councilor and minority leader of the Quezon City government, representative of the 2nd District of Quezon City in the 9th, 10th, and 11th Congresses, former Director General of the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, and occupied key positions in local and international organizations. He likewise served as agent at major universities in the Philippines, holds a doctorate in organizational development, degrees in law and public administration, and several honorary doctorates. He attended various leadership programs at prestigious universities and institutes in the USA and Switzerland. Let's all welcome DBP Director Kathleen.
Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Hari naman, lahat tayo busog na, no? At sa ating mga panguhing pandangal, si Dr. Cabalsa, Dr. Intal, Dr. Mauricio, and Dr. Alaw, yes. Salamat po sa pakikisa sa DBP. At gusto ko sanang bigyan diin at bigyan ng pagpapahalaga ang aking kapwa-direktor na si Director Inday Asenas. It was through her initiative. Pwede ba palakpakan natin siya? Chairman of the Development Forum of the Board of Directors. Actually, I have a prepared message here. But being true to myself, I thought I should come out, speak through my heart. You know, my advocacy, as mentioned, I'm the chairman of the advocacy committee, has always been on education, on good governance, and development. Kanina nalaman ko na ang Development Academy of the Philippines ay anak pala ng DBP. At lumalabas sa aking personal na pananaw at pag-aaral, mukhang tinalakdan ng DBP ang kanyang anak. I hope I'm not exaggerating, but that's how I really feel about it. Di ba ganun tayo training sa mga ating management personnel sa Baguio? Wala nagsabi sa akin na gamitin ng DBP. Anak natin yun pag natin tinatulikuran, pinababayan. Gusto ko sana malaman 60% at magkano na itulog ng DBP sa kanyang anak ng DAP. Di ba? Maliwanag yun Kaya kami ni Dr. Kabata, the Chester, may nakagagawa na kami. It's my personal effort. Unang-una, alam niyo na pag-usapan namin, DAP is a creation of an executive order, right? I'm promising myself that under this new government, we have a charter DAP with a law, special law, special charter. At hindi po kaawa-awa at hindi po nyo nang kalimutan ng DBP. Tayong magulang Di ba, hindi alinsyon sa ating kultura ng magulang ang pinababayaan ng anak. Pero kung tayo na, pinababayaan ng magulang. Anyway, another thing I learned, yung nabagay na about rules. Problema natin bilang Pilipina, bilang sambayanan. Sino ba gumagawa ng mga rules natin? Office of the President and the other agencies. We have judicial legislation to the Supreme Court, but basically we have congressional enactments. Ang tanong, who controls Congress? Kasi mabigat ito sasabihin ko. Kaya limitado at kulang ang ating development because of our leaders. I think it was Dr. Cabalsa who said we should moderate the greed of elites. Aminin natin mga kapatid, we're controlled by elites. Kaya kita nyo, ako nalilit ako pag binabanggit na sa food security, nag-i-import pa tayo, nakakayang banggitin na. So basic, pero nag-i-import tayo. Nahihiya ako bilang Pilipino. Mas kumikita pa mga traders na sumusuporta sa mga kandidato pagka-senador, pagka-presidente. Buti po maliwanag po yun. The rule makers are not, sa Tagalog, hindi po mahalang bayan at sambayanan. Nung when I was a kid, like all of us, kabisado natin panatang makabayan. Nakapikit tayo, kabisado natin. But afterwards, sino nagmamahal sa bayan? Sino nagmamahal sa sambayanan? Karamihan sa atin, mahal ang sarili, pamilya, at negosyo. Period. Hindi katulad po ng kalatig bansa po natin. And if I mention with some, naiingit po ako, the Vietnamese people, kahanga-hanga ang kanilang ginawa. Pinalo na lang pinakamalakas na army sa buong mundo. Pero hindi sila nawalan ng loob, nawalan ng pag-asa. Ngayon, one of the rising economies in the world. Kinikwento ko po ito pag ako'y pinapalo ko yung CNN coverage. Yung international CNN, not the CNN Philippines. Nakikita ko isang advertisement dun kung napapansin nyo. Yung electric car. Boom. That's made in Vietnam. Electric car. Tayo hanggang ano lang nagawa natin, Ford Fiera. Wala na. Pero look at the Vietnamese people. When they drove away the American forces, Vietnamese scientists, engineers, technocrats, not waiting for the government's invitation, went home immediately. Tayo, kailan pa tayong gumawa ng batas or executive order, yung parang balik scientists, balik technocrats. Because walang pagmamahal sa bayan at sambayanan. Kaya itong ginawa sa initiative of our chairperson, Director Inday, this is a wake-up call for DBP. Mukhang nababangungot na tayo. Kailangan magising tayo sa katotohanan at sumama tayo sa kilusang pagpapaganda ng ating bayan at bansa. Kaya aking pong manalangin bilang isang director, sana ang next set of directors na maglilingkod po sa DBP, ang susunod na Pangulo ng DBP at Chairman ng DBP, sana isa puso nila, isa isip nila, isa buhay nila ang ano ang mabuti para sa bayan at para sa sambayanan. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Director Liban.
Excuse me. I-clarify, ano pa lang yung, kasi dapat alam niyo ito dahil kayo ngayong ama ng DAP. The history is, there's no need for a charter, Director Liban, because the creator, the one who created the DAP is Ferdinand Marcos himself. Presidential decree po. So there's a charter. Yeah, that's a law. So there's no need for a law. Yeah. And President BBM as well as Jaime Marcos, they're very much aware that their father created the. Alam nila. In fact, they have been, even in exile, they have been helping the also.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Liban. And before we end, and for the closing remarks, may we call on another DBP Board Director. She is a clinical psychologist by profession, holds various graduate degrees from top universities in the Philippines and the US. Her extensive career experience includes psychodiagnostics, human resources management, crisis communication, team building, and resource governance, among others, with expertise in resiliency strengthening and competence building. Currently, she serves as Senior Advisor in Corporate Social Responsibility to local and international corporations in the mining, power, forestry, and infrastructure sectors. She is a founding trustee of the nonprofit Mothers for Peace Social Enterprises, Inc., and Chairperson Emerita of the Women Institute for Social Entrepreneurship Incorporated, that provides women in peace-building roles with opportunities on capacity building for sustainable livelihoods. In her capacity as a director of DBP, she likewise serves as the director of DBP Service Corporation and Al Amana Islamic Investment Bank of the Philippines, and sits as chairperson in DBP's Governance Committee. Help me welcome Director Maria Lourdes A. Arsa.
Thank you, Nick. I'm just going to make this short and sweet since I know that we have the time. But anyway, on behalf of the DBP Board of Directors, our chairman, Bert Romulo, and all our directors, and you have met one of our most able ones, Director Dante Liban, and earlier Director Ami Aisma, and our directors in Mindanao, Directors Rogelio Garcia, Directors Emmanuel Galicia, and of course, Director Luis Bunguyan, and our President and CEO, Manny Herbosa, and our newest director, Director Connie Padilla, our officers and staff. I would like to really thank all of you, Dr. Tony Calao, Attorney Horex Mauricio, Dr. Chester Cabalsa, and of course, our Professor Guillermo Santos, whom I have known for a long, long time. And also, I have also known Tony, because we've been friends for a long time. I want you to know that this forum has been 3 years in the making. We really have tried to put this together, but it was also a little bit difficult because of time availability and flux. I think I have mentioned to you why the GovCom organized this. It is really to give a context of the work that we do in development, being the only development banking institution in the Philippines. These are very exciting times. The pandemic, I feel, is not only an economic crisis, but it has become a humanitarian crisis. And COVID actually has given us a very unique opportunity in DBP to be able to reflect and evaluate who we really are. And it has also exposed our vulnerabilities. It has helped us also look into the vulnerabilities of our nation, and also as the vulnerabilities and limitations of our leaders. And so whether as we look at the past and we live the present and we look at the future, and from the very, very excellent presentations that we have had today of Dr. Narciso Intal, maraming salamat po. And you can really see that there is really a need to what I would call future-proof our work. I am basically an environmental social governance person in the private sector. I do a lot of risk management, as you know, in the resources sector. And as basically a clinical psychologist, I see everything from the point of view of human behavior. We impact the world, and therefore we are the only ones who can change the world. There is no other way that we can change our world unless we ourselves change ourselves. Because whatever we do, whatever we say, there is always something inside us that drives us to doing it. And as a clinical psychologist, wherein my expertise is supposed to be the abnormalities of human behavior, I can see that man is man. Being human is being human. But it doesn't mean that we cannot overcome our weaknesses and frailties. And DBP is only as good as our human resources. The government is only as good as our leaders and all of us who work with government. The world is only as good as mankind. But unfortunately, mankind never learns from their mistakes. Unfortunately, the memories are very short. And even as we look at all the philosophers of the world, from the time of the Romans and the Greeks up to today, the world is still hungry. There's still so much poverty. There's war. And right now, war is happening there. I do not see economic development as a question of money. No. For me, development is when we are able to close the gap between the rich and the poor. And I think that is what we have to work on. We are a very rich country, and there are very many rich people. And there's so many people in the Philippines, billionaires, who are in the Forbes list of billionaires worldwide. But we still have so much poverty. So I think that the work of DBP is not only in terms of the GDP, the GNP, or whatever have you, but as I've always said, we have to close the gap between the rich and the poor. Insurgency is not because of poverty. It is because of agitation. And the reason for agitation is because of the fact that people have reason to agitate. Okay, so for me as a student and a professional in human behavior, when do people agitate? When do people feel that they cannot cope and therefore they either cut out by becoming mentally ill, or they kill themselves and they become suicidal, or they kill people? all the aggressions go out. There's only 3 ways to cope with stress. There's only 3 ways by which we can control our extreme emotions. You cop out into fantasy, those are the ones in the mental hospitals, or you kill yourself because you want to end it all. But the worst is to do harm to others. And the only way to do this is to fulfill the basic needs. So if we see the Development Bank of the Philippines as an instrument of human security, that we are the buffer zone, that we are the frontliners for promoting this human security, then maybe in some little way, we can make this country a better place. We have to reach out to everyone. We have to rebuild our nation. And as what Dr. Cabalsa is saying, and Dr. Tony is saying, and Attorney Horex is saying, we have what it takes inside us. But the problem is, how do we do it? And what Director Dante is saying. I know that life in DBP is not perfect. I know that there are complicated lives that we are leading here in DBP. And we, your board, are trying very hard to understand those complications. And we are trying so hard to meet your needs so that each of you can also meet the needs of the Filipino people who depend on us. So let us all come together as what they have said, vertical, horizontal governance, whole of DBP approach tayo, ha? Let us not work in silos. Let's have a whole DBP approach. Let us all work as teams. Please, no more turfing. No more, mas magaling ako. Self-righteous. You are, you know. So we have to try to work together and we have to remove the silos within DBP. And I hope the Development Bank, the DBP can rely on the DAP, the Development Academy of the Philippines, to be able to bring out the best in DBP. Sabi po ni Director Dante, you are the anak and we are the parent, but maybe it looks like you are now the parent and we are the anak. Okay? I mean, when we got in here 6 years ago, there were so many challenges, but those challenges have changed. So we tried to cope. I started with the HR committee. I'm ending with the governance committee. But you know, pareho-pareho lang yan, no? But we have to understand each other. We have to care for each other. And I think now that we have the DAP with us, and now that we have the Center for Philippine Futuristic Studies and Management as our knowledge base, knowledge is very important because ignorance is for me an enemy. If we choose to be ignorant, and that's what I'm trying to do with this development forum, is to help everyone to go out of ourselves and see life for whatever it is. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming, for your time. And thank you so much, distinguished speakers and presenters, and to my beloved board of directors, officers, and staff. Thank you so much. Mabuhay ang Pilipinas, mabuhay ang Pilipino.
Thank you, Director Arsenas, for your remarks and for all that insight into DBP and where we are going from here. So now at this time, I would like to thank everyone who took their time to attend this development forum, to those physically present in this hall, and those who joined our Zoom channel and Facebook live stream. We hope that this has been an enlightening experience for you. May now call on our DBP directors, Director Arsenas, Director Liban, Dr. Cabalza, Dr. Cano, and Dr. Intal, for the presentation of tokens and certificates of appreciation to our distinguished guests. We may ask you to just stand here and
I would like also to thank most especially the Knowledge Management Department, Nonoy, for really spearheading this with the Special Projects Group, Ronald, and of course for VP Mantaring, where this came, your idea. You know, this all came in because of that idea that you had that we have to start on culture change. Thank you so much for that, VP Orji. And we are very grateful to all the sector heads for coming and all of you. And please come into the stage because this is all our program.